Oh boy, welcome back everyone. It's Tuesday here on the Damage Report. It's shaping up to be a rough week of news, so you take the levity where you find it. Our guest today actually was able to get a chuckle from Sean Hannity, a noted right-wing joke maker. No, anyway, we got Jordan Uhl today. Jordan, how's it going?
John, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of Hannity and everything he says.
He's great. We'll get to the what briefly made Jordan laugh a little bit later on in the program. It is insanity. But anyway, Jordan, I think we know what the news is gonna be about this week, probably for the rest of the year. I know that you're gonna be diving into this topic on Deep Dive later on today. You wanna give people any details about that?
That's right, at 4 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch, twitch.tv/TYT. If you're already on Twitch, just stay here. We've got Mike Preisner from Empire Files. He is an anti-war veteran, activist, writer, thinker, talker, everything. We'll be diving into the Afghanistan withdrawal and exploring the moral imperative for the US to accept refugees here. So you don't want to miss it. It's going to be great.
Awesome. Yes, everyone watching this, you can tune in to Deep Dive and feel confident that you will be exposed to sane thoughts that reflect some empathy. And you won't have the experience that I've had over the past 48 hours where I've kind of checked out of everything because I don't want to see what anyone is saying about any of this because I don't trust any of them and I'm very worried about all of it. Like I don't want to go on CNN and find that they're pushing for us to go back to war. I don't want to go on Fox we'll show you, to see the stuff they've been saying about refugees. It's a rough time for faith in your fellow man, I think. But anyway, thank you everybody for being here. We are gonna be talking about a lot of things. Shockingly, Afghanistan is going to be at the top of our list, but we also will be checking in on George W. Bush, an old favorite. Chris Cuomo finally addresses what happened with his brother, the former governor. Nancy Pelosi, how did she do last year during such a rough year for so many Americans? We'll be touching base with those and other topics. And along the way, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, sharing the stream, that would be great so that people know that the stream is live. And if you want to send us messages, we'll respond as we go. But that said, Jordan, you want to jump into all this?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. We're jumping right into this video.
I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw US forces. That's why we're still there. We were clear-eyed about the risks. We planned for every contingency, but I always promised the American people that I would be straight with you. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending US military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision.
Okay, so look, let's admit that there is a little bit of contradiction in that we planned for every possible outcome and we were shocked by how fast this developed. You kind of got to pick one of those two lanes, I feel like. But that said, he did not do what I was a little bit worried yesterday he might do, which is, so we're sending our like 5,000 soldiers there, and next week it'll be 10, and then possibly 20, and then we're definitely staying in. There's still time for that sort of outcome to happen, but Jordan there, he apparently he's not super apologetic about how chaotic things became over the past couple of days, which I feel like there could have been a bit more of that, but he apparently is staying the course that admittedly he did say he would be doing throughout this year. What did you make of what Biden said?
Biden's speech yesterday, I thought was, hit a couple points. One, it's, hey, look, we inherited this mess, and they really are trying to drive this line home that they're not going to extend it into a third decade and give it to a fifth president. So that's the narrative they want. They want to be the administration that ripped off the Band-Aid, but no one else would, right? Never mind that he was, tangential to power for 8 years, and they ran on leaving pretty firmly in 2012. and ending in 2008, before following that with a surge. But this is what they want his administration to be defined as, and this idea that they plan for every outcome and they're caught by surprise kind of flies in the face of just basic facts and intelligence reports. So SIGAR, the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, has been warning about this outcome for months, saying the Afghanistan military is not prepared. They're going to collapse. This is going to be a disaster how we're doing this. So to act like they've planned for all of these outcomes and they're caught by surprise, it just is ludicrous. What we need to do is accept these refugees here. We need to expedite paperwork. We need to give the green light to people who helped us there, people who are in danger there. There are unconfirmed reports that I'm hearing from friends and allies that the Taliban is marking homes of ethnic and religious minorities. And as we've seen the transition of power in other countries around the world throughout history, often what happens is ethnic cleansing. That is horrible. So we need to make sure we protect people who are vulnerable, who need to get out, accept refugees here. It is the least we can do after invading their country and disrupting and ultimately imploding the government.
100%. And we're going to be talking a lot today and probably for quite a while about refugees. Sorry, Fox News. I know that you're predicting that all us lefties are going to be so focused on refugees. Yeah, that's reasonable. That's obviously what we should do. I feel like, look, you're totally right. There were people who apparently thought for some reason that it wouldn't turn out this way. But as you point out, it is not, you cannot say that nobody predicted it, nobody in a position of power. So what would seem to be a slightly more reasonable argument would be, we said we're gonna get out, we're gonna do it. Like, yes, over the past few months, there's been some worrying signs, but I also know that those sorts of worrying signs have been used by multiple administrations across both parties to stay in forever. We weren't gonna continue that, so yes, there's chaos. We always knew there would be chaos. More chaos is coming, but we're getting out. Still doesn't really explain why you were so unprepared to get people literally out of Kabul in like the last day or two. And so I understand why they're not going with that, but that would at least be consistent with the I stand squarely behind argument that he's trying to make. Now that said, we do have more of President Biden. So here is a little bit more of what he had to say yesterday.
Mistake of staying and fighting indefinitely in a conflict that is not in the national interest of the United States, of doubling down on a civil war in a foreign country.
Okay, and again, Jordan, you're so right when he's like, the idea that they inherited this, but it's like you inherited it from your grandfather, and you were kind of your grandfather's brother. Like you were there, like you were involved. I understand that it wasn't Biden's choice necessarily, but there's a lot of blame to go around, and we can debate again, as we did yesterday on the show, how much of the blame should go to different individuals, different groups, those sorts of things, the media, all of that. Biden definitely deserves some, definitely. And so I briefly wonder, I don't want to focus on this too much, Jordan, but from what you've seen of the response, I know that the right obviously wants to, it's kind of like a weird having your cake and eating it too. Many of them say that they support Trump. They wanted to get out too. And I think we both agree that if everything was the same, but Trump was president instead of Biden and the same thing had happened, they wouldn't be shedding a single tear for any of this. But they definitely want to use it to attack Biden. So that seems like a weird, narrow lane to try to occupy where you don't disagree with the outcome at all, aside from the possibility of refugees, but you need it to be a club to attack the administration, who is very much continuing the policy that Trump laid out. I don't know, what do you think about all that?
Well, a couple things. One, I do want to, point out that in his statement, talking about ending endless wars is just, it's farcical. That's not happening. We aren't really making any gains toward that. They're ultimately removing just a few thousand troops, but they're still, as they have been committed to and have been bragging about around the world for the past several months, is their ability to strike anywhere. So they're going to continue a less visible aerial form of combat in the region. So they're definitely going to continue operations in the Middle East. It's just they're not going to have the human cost associated with it, because there's, that's harder to sell home when you have people coming home in body bags. On the Republican response to this, though, I thought that was just unbelievably funny, because you have people who often never met a war they didn't like, and just bemoaning this scene at the airport where people are clinging to planes and saying this is Biden's Saigon moment, which sure, if you want to draw parallels, there certainly aesthetically there are, but the next logical step after that is, okay, well, how do we take care of those people? And that is welcoming them here. Oh, no. Suddenly they don't want to help anymore. They want that that play. They want that line of attack against Biden, but ultimately that's all it is. It's simply rhetoric. Yeah. There's no substantive critique behind it. There's no alternative substantive response to this, which would be accepting refugees. It's just that they want to hit him for political points, and that's it. To them, this is a sport. They are sanitizing the horror. They're sanitizing the fallout there because they just want a line of attack against Biden.
Yeah, basically, you're right. It's obviously a provocative, powerful image, horrific. You're watching people fall to their deaths, and so they will imply that they have some sort of foundational issue with it. But really, all they wanted was a fence 20 feet away from to keep them away. That's all. We just didn't want them near the plane. They don't want them on the plane, certainly. Many of them, at the very least. In any event, we now had, I want to catch you up a little bit on the situation there. Many people have seen the photo going around of individuals in the C-17. So if we can go to this shot, you can see literally hundreds of individuals were packed into it. I mean, again, like you can only say that heart goes out to the desperation of people trying to get onto a plane with literally no belongings to potentially never return to their home country. Yeah, it's an entirely horrific situation. Now, an update on the situation at the airport following more US troops returning there. Ed O'Keefe reported that the Kabul airport is open. Flights are able to land and depart, including on civilian side. 3,500 troops are on the ground. US military flights are taking off with US citizens and US embassy personnel on board. 700 plus were evacuated on Monday, including 150 US citizens, which sounds like a lot of people. Supposedly they had estimated that they would be able to get something like 5,000 people out per day, which clearly they're not coming even close to. And by the way, in addition to the rough videotape that you've seen, the body of a dead Afghan was found in the landing gear of a military jet leaving Kabul airport. So again, to the desperation, we're gonna return to the planes with some of these right wingers later on, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe now with so much focus on this, Jordan, they'll take the evacuation situation more seriously. Maybe sort of perversely, like a dark lining on this whole situation is that maybe they will be a little bit more accepting of refugees when we finally get the policy of the US government, which we don't know yet, than they would have been if there had not been this chaos that produced so much media. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I mean, you would think, but this is the same kind of posturing we're seeing here as we see in China, right? So just as right wingers want to bemoan the conditions that the Uyghurs face in China, their response there is a military one. It's never, okay, let's create a pathway for citizenship. Let's bring them here, grant them asylum. Everything's great. No, it's never that, because all of a sudden then you get into this, great replacement theory. You get into this kind of white fright. And all of a sudden, they're going to make our communities dirtier and poorer and more divided. And that was the line of attack that Tucker Carlson launched last night against refugees coming here. Unfortunately, those are working, because there was a report in Politico this morning that now the White House is afraid of political attacks from the right on this refugee resettlement issue. So that is holding them back in accepting more, working faster, whatever, and helping people who supported as Afghans for a Better Tomorrow quoted as saying in the New York Times today, they supported American ideas for 20 years. They supported these American projects for 20 years. And now when we're leaving and they need our help, we're nowhere to be found.
Yeah, there are people who joined up, did a full career of work, eventually left, and no, we're just forgetting about them. And that is what many in media want to happen. Yes, and we will certainly be talking more about that. I'm glad that you pointed out the constant Biden fears, just like on the border, the exact same situation with the border. And look, I understand there's sort of like you have to compare the two. On the one hand, you bring in the refugees and the right attacks you. On the other hand, you don't bring in the refugees and the right stops attacking you. Then they're totally fair to you. You give them what they want and they won't attack you, surely. It's just such a stupid calc. They're gonna attack you regardless. They're gonna say that you're replacing good white Americans regardless. At least you could do some good in helping these people. Now, really fast, I wanna go to one last video. Here is Nicole Wallace responding to Joe Biden's speech yesterday, and we're gonna respond to her estimate of what the American people think about what's going on. But here is what she had to say.
I'm gonna say two things, and both hard to say, but I'll say them anyway because here we are. 95% of the American people will agree with everything he just said. 95% of the press covering this White House will disagree. And for an American president to finally be completely aligned with such an overwhelming majority of what the American people think about Afghanistan is probably a tremendous relief to the American people. He also went a long way toward really fleshing out a Biden doctrine. And there are questions about whether he can achieve what he set out, but there is no equivocation. There is no lack of confidence that this is the right decision. And what he has going for him is a vast majority of Americans in both political parties.
That seems mostly true. That I think more than 90% of the American public are not interested. Obviously there are some people who are CEOs of defense contractors. They want us to be there forever, but I don't think there are many people like that. That said, I feel like a lot of the conversation, as we will get to after our first break, is going to rapidly turn on refugees, the entire getting out of Afghanistan part, which, as you point out, is getting out on the ground, not fully. We're still gonna have the ability to project power and all that. What did you think about what she had to say?
My first takeaway was I'm tired of Bush admin veterans telling me what to think about Afghanistan. I mean, this is Bush's former communications director, and like, look around, like they're everywhere. You got Bill Kristol's, you got David Frum's, you got Nicole Wallace's. They're all doing fine. Architects, salespeople for this war that wasted trillions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of people are now dead are doing fine. And here, just juxtapose her in a cushy air-conditioned TV studio with the people who are the victims of policies and US positions and foreign policies that she sold to the media for years, are now like desperate for help, and she's just capitulating and throwing support behind another president who helped sell it as well.
So your prediction would be that she's not going to be advocating for massive refugee resettlement?
I mean, maybe a slight amount. I think they'll I think there's like a couple people, like even Tom Cotton was like, if you need help, like call my office. That's like the least you can do. Like the bar is like underground. It's so easy to clear on that one. I think a greater amount, I think proportionally, the bare minimum should be like 170, 180,000 refugees here alone. If we looked at what like even Canada is doing at the same rate in our participation, that's the rough estimate. I don't expect a full-throated support of that amount from her. And I think people in the Afghan community, activists, organizers, were upset by his speech. There was a line yesterday, he said that the Afghan government fell because the military didn't have the will to fight. That's not true. 70 Afghan soldiers died for every one American soldier that died. This idea that they don't have the will to fight is ludicrous. They had support, but also the Taliban, came across weapons stores that we left behind and they quickly looted and added to their arsenal. So like they're fighting against US firepower as well. It was sloppy, it was haphazard, and they certainly had the will to fight. They don't have the US military behind them now.
It's that knee-jerk thing that most countries probably would have to do, but certainly the US has to do, which is, I mean, we didn't really lose. There was some other explanation. It was probably someone else who's cowardly, I guess. Okay, whatever, man. If that makes you feel better about it. Unfortunately, that also probably helps grease the path towards the next interminable war. So be on the lookout for that. Anyway, we are going to take our first break. We come back. Let's see what the right is saying about this. We're going to talk a little bit more about refugees and about why the Taliban ended up winning. We have a theory from Tucker Carlson, which we'll give to you after this. Welcome, everyone. Let's see what's going on out there in the audience. Morag Ramsdahl says, looking forward to getting my second vaccine dose next month. Potential side effects shouldn't be too much of an issue. I hope not. I went J&J, so I didn't have to experience it. Oh, Jordan, did you see the advice about boosters? They're advising boosters after 8 months or something like that.
I did. Give it to me. I'm ready. Give me all I'll take whatever. Just as long as I can, go outside again. That'd be nice.
Are you one of those people we've been reading about, like mixing and matching? Like, man, I got Moderna, but let's see what this Pfizer's about.
I heard, I was kind of surprised. A friend was like, "Oh, my friends just go and said they haven't had one yet and got another shot." I don't know. Should you do that? Like that, I'm a little bit more hesitant. But also, then I saw the WHO reports, like, okay, maybe wait on boosters until other developing countries have a chance to get one shot, and that kind of made me feel a little guilty about boosters. So I'm gonna wait a bit before I get one. But I'm happy to get one. I think it's great, and they obviously work.
Yes, good point. Daniel says, John, I work in groceries and I see people struggling how to scan items like grapes, and I'm surprised that it's prices by weight. We were talking about this woman making Walmart employees bag her groceries in a self-checkout line as some sort of protest against Walmart. Lee Bloomer says, so happy to see John and Jordan today, together on today's show. Me too. It's always good to have Jordan back. Jordan's been on the show since the very beginning, baby. You're one of our oldest recurring guests, back before there was a pool to dive deep in.
Wow.
Ganny says, might have to evacuate today because of California fires. Cross your fingers for me, everyone. Hope that you're able to make it out. And that's, I feel like a little bit bad when, obviously the Afghanistan news is huge. We're talking a lot about it. We're going to be talking about it a lot throughout this week, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that all of the crazy, terrible news from last week of, fires in the Mediterranean, fires in Siberia, China had massive flooding. All of that is still going on, obviously. Anyway, Overflow says her answer sounded very much like a nothing answer. Yeah, we'll see. I am curious to see when they finally start polling the American people what they think about getting out. We'll see. It seems like the appetite for this sort of thing has been going down for a long time. We'll see if the right is able to change that, or if CNN and MSNBC start calling for a renewed deployment or something like that. Non-human humanist says being a woman or a child from Afghanistan or someone related to one should automatically grant you asylum in every country. Well, certainly a lot of countries were involved in the last 20 years there. We'll see. I mean, I saw Merkel was saying some amount she expects that they'll resettle. Canada did too. Macron seemed like pretty resistant to it. We'll see. Anyway, over in Twitch, Brett Ehrlich, some joker in the chat, gifted a tier 1 sub. Thank you for that. He says, I like gifting. I'm my own man now. Oh geez. Anyway, tell me what to put. Subscribe for 9 months, as I can't believe it's been 9 months already. I love the community here on Twitch. TDR and TYT keep me informed and educated on the news every day. Thank you. Tell me what to put. Diego Weston subscribed for 7 months. Zakharov Lopatev gifted 5 tier 1 subs. Thank you for that. Apologize for the mangling. Shadow Devil subscribed for 5 months. Says 5 down, many more to go. Hashtag Bezos Bucks. Thank you. Kyokin subscribed for 15 months, right up there at the top. And Aximum gifted a tier 1 sub. Thank you to all of you who have been helping to expand the community and make it a community people want to be involved in. That said, we have a lot more news, so we'll see you after this. Okay, everybody, hold on to your butts. It's about to get weird. Tucker Carlson has a theory as to why the Taliban was able to so quickly retake control of Afghanistan. Here it is.
Kabul has just fallen. It might be worth asking the most obvious question of all. Why did the Taliban win? How did the 6th century triumph over the 21st century? They're indications that the single most notorious and reviled government in the world, primitive people famous for their brutality, rigidity, and humorlessness, are more popular in parts of Afghanistan than they were when we expelled the mullahs from Kandahar 20 years ago. They don't seem to be less popular. So how did that happen? What's the answer? We ought to pause to think about that. Let's not just blow past it like it was an act of God. It's not. What is the answer? Well, countries are very complicated, all of them, so there are likely many answers. But one of those answers may be that the population of Afghanistan has firmly rejected what our leaders were selling it over 20 years. It turns out that the people of Afghanistan don't actually want gender studies symposia. They didn't actually buy the idea that men can become pregnant. They thought that was ridiculous. They don't hate their own masculinity. They don't think it's toxic. They like the patriarchy. Some of their women like it too. So now they're getting it all back.
So Jordan, you've seen a lot of the takes. There's a lot of bad takes out there. There always are. There are on this. I'm not an expert on Afghanistan. I don't think that that's why. I don't think that any of that word salad there is on the top 500 reasons that the Taliban now controls Afghanistan. I don't think someone was like, man, I really don't want to return to like 1998 era Afghanistan, but hey, wait a second, is that theater hosting gender like studies speakers? Well, let me get the burqa. I don't think that that is why any of this happened. What do you think? Am I missing something?
Well, I mean, on this point, Tucker Carlson is somebody who has described people in Afghanistan and Iraq in the past as semi-literate primitive monkeys. So as a baseline, that's his worldview. So this jingoism that he, that informs his foreign policy, his lines like this is a primitive society, these are brutal people. It's all rooted in this white nationalism. But the idea that the Taliban succeeded because of like critical race theory being taught in elementary schools or something is so funny. It just shows they're just playing the hits. They're ultimately phoning the segment in because I don't know. No one gives a shit. No one cares outside of the Fox Republican internet worldview. The culture war BS that we see here. The idea that the Taliban would care about that, or that people in Afghanistan would be motivated by putting a woman in Star Wars as a lead character, like that, it's real. Honestly, it's funny. It's funny to think about. Yeah. This is something you would see in like a satire website.
Yeah, I'm glad that you didn't acknowledge it. I think that Daisy Ridley and Kelly Marie Tran really do have a lot to answer for in terms of military preparedness. I think, look, it's so aggressively stupid. Pompeo yesterday said it was because of critical race theory. Again, okay, so I get that they're trying to, like, it's always the government beneath the government they're talking about. It's the deep state or whatever. But like, okay, so then why did Trump do all of this? Like, he was in charge, right? He was the big alpha general, right? Why was he doing gender symposia? Is that what he was doing? It's just so stupid. And by the way, let's also not miss that in that list of things that they're rejecting, he was not just laying out, here are things that the US was imposing, they're against it. It's just a coincidence, I suppose, that Tucker Carlson also hates all of those things, that he is very intently lining himself up with the Taliban, which, by the way, you're on Twitter every once in a while, Jordan. That has not been rare over the last 48 hours. Like sometimes veiled, sometimes fairly transparent. Like, the Taliban is better in a variety of ways. Takes coming from the right, they really do seem to be lining up with the Taliban because they do agree with the Taliban on a number of different things. There are obviously differences that should go without saying, but their view on a lot of different groups in society are not that dissimilar. Their belief about vaccines, about abortion, all that stuff. And like, it's not like, Tucker's doing a big thing about how the Taliban sucks and I'm trying to say how they're close. He's effectively defending the Taliban, saying they have rejected the things that have made us weak. The US military, he continually does his segments about how it's too feminized. And we're letting transgender people serve in all of that. He's laying out that the Taliban is doing it better than we do. And I don't think that that's an accident. Why don't we give a little bit more and see if he makes any more sense in this segment?
So maybe it's possible that we failed in Afghanistan because the entire neoliberal program is grotesque. It's a joke. It's contrary to human nature. It answers none of our deepest human desires. It is merely a performance staged for the performer. It's not even supposed to improve your life. It's ridiculous. And ideas that ridiculous can only be imposed by force, only with armed men at gunpoint. The moment these ideas are not mandatory, the second the troops withdraw, in fact, people tend to revert to the lives that they prefer to live. That may be the real lesson of Afghanistan. Let's hope our leaders notice it.
Okay, so really fast, two things. So one, there have been a lot of takes, some I think honest, some clearly designed to get us back into Afghanistan of, man, it really does suck to think about what it must be like right now in Afghanistan to be a member of the LGBTQ community or a woman who has had rights that they didn't have under the Taliban. Tucker's not having any of that. All of the improvement of the condition of the lives of all of those people over the last 20 years is worth nothing. And you should not spare an ounce of empathy for any of them. They secretly didn't like that stuff anyway. You noticed his stuff about how the women like the patriarchy too. They're actually secretly hoping to be dominated. That was his point. And how twisted, Jordan, that he says these sorts of beliefs can only be implemented at the barrel of a gun. And as soon as those guns are gone, people revert to the way they really want to live. Wait a second, so was the Taliban coming in with roses and apple pie? I feel like they had some guns. I feel like they just conquered the country, but not for our values, not that lib experiment, for the values that Tucker wants. Those are literally being implemented at the barrel of a gun right now, and that's cool. Let's not even talk about that. But the gender symposia, transgender girls in sports, that stuff, the libs gotta have guns to get you to support that. It's just it's so nonsensical, so twisted. I feel bad for anyone having to watch that trying to make sense of the damn thing.
Yeah, I'm just imagining the Taliban going door to door to make sure no one's doing critical race theory inside. Like this idea that like anybody cares about any of this outside of, like this is like, also these are like purely like wealthy conservative problems. Like people who have like a suburban home and a boat and a nice truck and an arsenal of guns in their basement, who think their like liberties and freedom are under attack, who thinks they're victims of tyranny, like that. Like those are the type of people who think that anybody outside of their own community cares about any of this. I mean, they're just projecting, as we saw with like, people on every different side projecting their worldview onto this. And as the right does so many times with every sort of culture war thing during the Trump administration, the common refrain was, this is why Trump won. I mean, no, it wasn't. Like no one votes for like that. I mean, I'm sure a handful of people do, but like you're not gonna get a critical mass of people to show up and vote in mass in a national election over like what a seventh grader, a transgender runner winning a silver medal in an event like that. No one cares. So this is just Tucker's mission is to continue to divide, continue to afflict marginalized people, continue to cast them out of society, to marginalize them even further. That's what he wants. And whatever story is in the news, that's the current vehicle. So right now, it's the Taliban. It's the Taliban taking over, and that is somehow gender studies' fault.
Exactly. Yeah. He didn't like. I'm surprised he didn't try to imply that like senior leadership of the Afghan security forces would have stood up, but then they noticed that the publisher of Dr. Seuss pulled a couple books they'd never read and decided, what's it worth? Why bother? Anyway. Okay, so I want to turn to talking about refugees. I apologize that we're gonna have a third video of this person. We will move to others as well, but progressive groups, individuals who care about what's happening in Afghanistan are pushing for more refugees to be allowed into the United States and in other countries. But the attack against that process has already begun. Here is Tucker Carlson.
The people who made the Afghan occupation possible would like to see a lot more of our southern border, much more unrestrained immigration to the U.S. Bring in the refugees, they're screaming tonight. That's the only lesson they're taking from this debacle. So we're getting it. And if history is any guide, and it's always a guide, we will see many refugees from Afghanistan resettle in our country in coming months, probably in your neighborhood. And over the next decade, that number may swell to the millions. So first we invade, and then we're invaded. It is always the same. We'll be spending a lot more time on that subject in coming weeks because it matters.
Okay, well, I'm sure they'll be spending more time on that, not necessarily for that reason. Did you know that fundamental rule, first you invade, then you're invaded? Always. His job is so easy. You don't need to actually make a point or like just say something. Always, it's always a guide. Well, then why do we invade? What happened to Russia a couple decades ago? Why didn't we take history's lesson that you said we should always follow? Anyway, so Jordan, there are going to be refugees probably in your neighborhood, maybe in your room. There's a refugee behind you, Jordan. Did you know that? Be very afraid. And there are going to be millions. What do you think?
This is that is the great replacement theory, right? It's that the Democrats want people of color to come in and ruin your communities. This is he used a line like this in late 2018, advocating against immigration, saying immigrants make America poorer and dirtier and more divided. He sees people outside of this country, non-white people, as subhuman, as inferior, as dirty, unclean, whatever, disease-ridden. Never mind, white settlers brought with them tons of diseases. So we'll ignore that part of history. But this is his white nationalism on full display. Again, he called people from Afghanistan and Iraq semi-literate, primitive monkeys. That's how he sees people in that region, and that's how he sees, similarly, people from Central and South America. Anyone non-white from a different country, he sees as inferior. That's his worldview, and he's playing to people's fears, their racism, by saying they're going to come in your communities. Most likely not. Most of his viewership are suburban people in Middle America. That's not where these people are going to end up. So he's fear mongering, and he's casting people who need help as an enemy, as a invader. And the end result is, like as I mentioned earlier, the White House is caving to some of this scaremongering, and they're not as full-throated in their support for a robust refugee resettlement program because of these types of attacks.
Yeah, I saw that the Congressional Progressive Caucus put out a statement. I know people like Representative Ilhan Omar have been pushing for more refugees. But yeah, I think we should be very worried about what the Biden administration is going to do. Not only because they've fallen apart in the face of even hypothetical attacks from the right in the past on things like the border, but specifically on refugee camps, they've already capitulated. Now, thankfully, the great thing about how prone to capitulation the Biden administration is that they capitulated to the right and we attacked them, then they capitulated to us, at least to some extent. So maybe we can do that. They're afraid of the right now, so they're probably not going to have a very high cap on refugees. Well, let's attack them because they do fold. We can actually hopefully get through to him on that. But yeah, they're going to be demonizing in a variety of different ways, as you pointed out about the neighborhoods. Although I would say, are we going to have anyone that maybe will try to make the opposite point, that like maybe your neighborhood would be a lot better if it had some of these refugees in it? People who are, no, seriously, people who are brave enough to restart their life in pursuit of the values that they prize, rather than just living under a tyranny that they can't seem to escape, that they're willing and able to do that. I think that is pretty amazing. Tucker Carlson doesn't have that in him. Maybe an environment would be better with more people with that. But anyway, it's also going to come in another form. And not just generalized fear mongering, but a very specific sort of fear mongering, as you'll see from Laura Ingraham.
And is it really our responsibility to welcome thousands of potentially unvetted refugees from Afghanistan? All day we've heard phrases like, we promised them. Well, who did? Did you?
You're right. Nobody implied that aiding the US effort for multiple decades should have any benefits whatsoever coming to it. But there, Jordan, of course, the most important part is potentially unvetted. Yeah, they just open up the plane when they get here. I guess that's how it works. I guess they don't do any vetting, right?
Unfortunately, they do too much, and the departments don't talk to each other. I mentioned to you in a group chat yesterday that the DOD and the State Department, from what we're hearing, aren't even communicating. So people who are greenlit to come by state are being denied by DOD because of just bureaucratic quagmires and headaches. And we could be accepting more people, and we could be evacuating more people even sooner who are vetted and have been whitelisted by our government. But because they're doing too much, it's even, never mind. It's not about any of that with them, right? It's, do we have an obligation to help them? Do we have to take these people? Yes, that's nation building. That's what you wanted to do. This was the imperial project. As a consequence, as a side effect of your imperialism, this is a side effect. Accept it, own it, whatever. But no, they don't care about any of that. It was never about helping Afghanistan. It was never about creating a new government. It was about control. It's about regional control, ultimately using Afghanistan as a proxy for ultimately invading Iran.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't be surprised by the side effects. I hear that every time you invade, you get invaded. Always. That's what I heard. So I guess we just got to deal with it. But anyway, if you're watching this and if you want to see these people help, definitely get active in a variety of different forms. We're going to be talking about, I know that you're going to be talking about it more on Deep Dive. But it is a full court press to scare people into not supporting any refugees. And no matter what happens, if Biden did everything that Pramila Jayapal was asking for, there would still be a lot of suffering coming in Afghanistan. But these people in media are going to be working to make it as bad as it can possibly be. And in some cases are even more explicit in the reasoning for opposing refugees. On the pre-show, I talked about Marjorie Greene talking about not wanting people with the likeness of Ilhan Omar to become representatives coming in. So it's very clear what she was against. Charlie Kirk said that Biden intentionally let Afghanistan fall because he wants, quote, a couple 100,000 more Ilhan Omars to come into America to change the body politic permanently, which again is just great replacement theory, as Jordan was saying. Also, he did not pronounce Ilhan Omar's name correctly. And third, if you use the term body politic, you're a tool. So I'm just gonna put that out there. But anyway, yeah, it's all so clear. And we are running out of time. I will read just one more graphic. I swear to God, this is real. We were gonna play the video, but I thought it was just too much. The grift can be so refined in some cases that Sean Hannity on his radio show literally used as a transition, quote, there is a stampede, not only out of Afghanistan, but a stampede away from high prices, overpriced service from the big carriers like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile. The average family making the switch to Pure Talk. It was literally a transition he made on his show from Afghanistan and the refugees to you guys need to sign up for Pure Talk, which I've never even heard of. Anyway, it's a ridiculous world we live in. Okay, so with that, we are gonna take a break. When we come back, we got a lot more, so don't go anywhere. What a segue.
How is that real?
I swear it's real. He really said it.
Don't get trampled by high prices at the airport. Use Hotwire to find the lowest airline prices.
No, that's the thing. I was gonna make up other examples of it, but it's just too bad. I can't take it.
Unbelievable. I thought it was a joke. I thought you had written a joke into the rundown.
It's on Media Matters. I swear to God, it's in there.
Oh my God.
Anyway, Monondago Dragon says Tucker is master clickbait. Totally, yes. However, he also has millions of viewers and less so Laura Ingraham. So I'm a little bit less worried about her. Anyway, Gail says Tucker just said history is a guide. Then why is CRT a problem? That is true. You can only be affected by history if you know what it is. Anyway, Billy Shively says primitive. Tucker is the one preaching pure tribalism every damn day and convincing people to die of COVID, and he's calling anyone primitive. Yeah, a lot of people obviously took issue with the primitive thing. Like, he's so desperate to say racist stuff that describing the Taliban, we were beaten by the 6th century. They had guns and stuff. They had rockets. They had vehicles. Like there's something slightly different than the 6th century there. Anyway, Layla says, great to see Jordan back on the damage report. Always good to have him back on. Do you want to see more of Jordan? He's gonna be doing his own show a little bit later on today. Bernie says, what hyena hybrid Tucker Carlson says here makes me wonder if he would apply the same logic to the modern day slave trade in the north of Africa. I can imagine what he would say now. I can't, and I don't know that I want to necessarily, but if he had been broadcasting his show during those times, Jesus. Bicklebonk says, in New Zealand, we are back to strict level 4 lockdown after 1 case of COVID found in the community. Yeah, we're taking it seriously, that's for sure. RKNG Garcia, welcome to Tier 2 YouTube membership. You get access to the top 10 list with that. Non-Human Humanist says, Tucker Carlson's disgusting face expression after his rhetorical question is the pictogram translation of the German word Kotzbrocken. I don't know that word, but now I know what it looks like at least. Okay, Starry-Eyed Dragon said, it's my birthday. Lol, can I get a shout out from the, I'm just gonna say Dragon Daddy, as opposed to the whole thing. It would make this day perfect. Thank you, Starry-Eyed Dragon, I appreciate that. And happy birthday. Okay, let's see. T- says, remember when Bush had a shoe thrown at him? I would yeet a baby grand piano at Tucker. Nice. Okay, Devuff Bar says, America is basically the kind of person who asks for a ride, lies about where they needed to go, goes to buy drugs, leaves the helper in the car for hours, then steals their iPod as they're getting out of the car at their house, screwing over the people who trusted them. Yeah. Well, and look, to the extent that many of the countries that we have military bases in, obviously we have, the better part of 1,000 military installations of a variety of sizes in countries throughout the world. I don't know that they can necessarily change their relationship with us, but I am sure the experience of the past couple decades and the most recent development is probably influencing them, making them a little bit worried. I know other countries are trying to use that. I think China was putting out some propaganda that Taiwan shouldn't trust us anymore after what happened with Afghanistan. I get the point. I would question the source for it though. Seems a little biased. But anyway, Neon Night Dragon, thank you for subscribing for 6 months. Says thank you, love TYT and the progressive family. You keep me politically sane. Thank you. The audience keeps me as sane as I've been able to maintain. Depressed Progressive says, when Florida's underwater, our own people will be climate refugees. If we were letting in Afghans, then we better let in those coming from Central America and other countries. It's a good point. You're not gonna get through to them though, but thank you. Anyway, more to come after this. Okay, we didn't actually coordinate with the producer. I think we're gonna dispense with the last of the B block. She's terrible. We'll return to it at some point. I just can't take it. So very briefly, let's go into that. I want to get Jordan's impressions. You've probably all been wondering, what does George W. Bush think about the developments in Afghanistan? Obviously joking there, but he is talking. He said, Laura and George Bush put out a statement saying, the United States government has the legal authority to cut the red tape for refugees during urgent humanitarian crises, and we have the responsibility and the resources to secure safe passage for them now without bureaucratic delay. They said they're confident that the evacuation efforts will be effective, although of course so far they have not been. And the couple said they felt deep sadness over the events unfolding in Afghanistan, but they remained steadfastly optimistic that the nation's people were resilient, particularly younger Afghans who have grown up without the Taliban over the past 2 decades. So Jordan, what do you think about George W. Bush's thoughts about the developments in Afghanistan?
I'm not allowed to say, because we're not allowed to. We have to watch our language.
Certain words.
Yeah. No, no one asked.
He has empathy, Jordan.
Yeah, right.
He feels bad.
Over 100,000 people are dead because of George Bush. That's it. Like they could have ended it swiftly. The Taliban offered to hand over Osama bin Laden in December of 2001. That's it. He could have ended it there, but no, they wanted a shock and awe. They wanted a bombing campaign. They wanted a war, and they wanted to use that as a springboard. I mean, very early on, they were asking about how they use this to get into Iraq. This is what they wanted. They got what they wanted. They lied to the American people, and now over 100,000 people in Afghanistan alone are now dead. Mm-hmm. That's it. But okay. Well, I feel so sorry. I feel empathy for them. I'm so sad. Sure, no, he's not. He doesn't care. he will face 0 consequences for war crimes. That's it. He invaded a country that was completely unrelated to 9/11. Over 100,000 people are now dead. I don't care if he's sorry now. That's genocide.
Yeah. Well, and he's only sorry in like that he feels sadness. There has like, first of all, him saying that he was wrong, acknowledging it wouldn't mean anything, wouldn't bring back any lives, but he's not even doing that. None of them are. You were pointing out earlier in the show, all of those who pushed for the war, who are still working in media, giving their thoughts, their perspective, what do they want to happen? Yeah, as you point out, 100,000 lives, so many people have died in multiple countries as a result of this. And of course, trillions and trillions of dollars have been spent. And as I continually try to reiterate, we were sold reasons for these things to happen back in the day, but people need to become a little bit more savvy about who is going to win regardless of whether their plan works or not. Like whether Afghanistan becomes a successful democracy or whether Iraq falls in 2 weeks with no loss of life or whatever, whether that happened or not, the defense contractors were gonna get paid, and they did get paid. It doesn't matter to them if 100,000 people died, 1 million people died, 5 million people died. They were gonna get those contracts for literally decades. None of that money, we're not getting it back or anything like that. None of those CEOs ended up in jail. None of the military advisors did. The plan never worked, except in the areas where it did, which is delivering for the people who are ultimately designed to benefit from it. So George W. Bush, go paint a dog. Like the fact that there will never be any justice for him is so devastating.
A piece of context on that, on top of how, vastly they enriched themselves, right? The Intercept had a piece that showed if you invested $10,000 at the beginning of the war in defense contractor stocks, it would be worth 6 figures now. But beyond that, just to show how committed they are to increasing profits, to making money, and how little they care about the ending the war itself or mission or achieving their mission. When the withdrawal was announced, one of the ramifications was, oh, now you have all these contracts with defense contractors and defense manufacturers, weapons manufacturers that are going to be ended prematurely. Now you're going to enter in a litigation with them because they want all their money. They don't care about achieving the mission. They care about making money. So even when you end, you reach some sort of compromise, you reach some sort of deal to withdraw and end conflict, they're coming for their money whether you like it or not. That's who they are.
100%. No justice for literally anyone who got us into this. Didn't even lose re-election. Anyway. Okay, we're gonna fit in this last story. Why don't we go directly into this video and then we'll give our thoughts. We can launch directly into this.
I can't be objective when it comes to my family. So I never reported on the scandal. And when it happened, I tried to be there for my brother. I'm not an advisor, I'm a brother. I wasn't in control of anything. I was there to listen and offer my take. And my advice to my brother was simple and consistent. While it was something I never imagined ever having to do, I did urge my brother to resign when the time came.
Okay, so Chris Cuomo has finally addressed the fact that he didn't cover what was going on with Governor Andrew Cuomo, and also the reports that he had throughout been advising his brother. Advising doesn't mean you have control. It means that you're providing advice, and sometimes brothers are advisors. But anyway, he has now addressed it. He said that at some point he did suggest he resign. I am going to go out and speculate that was relatively late in the process. But Jordan, what do you think about Chris Cuomo finally addressing this?
Insufficient. I mean, the fact that he still even works, that's a huge conflict of interest. You have a prominent national anchor secretly writing press statements and advising a governor on strategy because he's his brother, after having him on the show before to give these aggrandizing interviews during COVID that ultimately helped set him up for this huge cult of personality. While he was, simultaneously cooking the books to cover up how they were killing people at nursing homes by putting surplus or overflow patients in nursing homes. This guy, the fact that he did that was so egregious. If that was a local anchor or even like a state level reporter doing the same thing, they would be fired. But because he's at CNN and it's ultimately an entertainment network, he's fine. They fired Mark Lamont Hill for saying Palestine should be free. They fired Reza Aslan for a really low level, something I might even be allowed to say on this show about Donald Trump. Like this whole facts first thing is completely bogus. But that he still has a job when those two people were fired for very, very small. And in Mark Lamont Hill's case, not even an offense at all.
Well, yeah, I don't even know what that. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, it's ludicrous.
Yeah, notably, like I try to think of other conflicts of interest like this. When it was revealed that Sean Hannity shared a lawyer with Trump and never revealed it, the fact that Cohen was his lawyer, like ever just moved on. That was always weird. Anyway, yeah, so he's addressing it. Look, I think I had less of a problem with the conflict of interest that produced him not talking about the scandal than I did with, for instance, could he have covered the nursing segment of that, but did not because of how it would reflect on his brother throughout, even prior to the most recent issues. So anyway, I am also curious what you all think about this. We have a poll up at tyt.com/polls. Should Chris Cuomo step down from his hosting role at CNN based on all of this? I have no idea how the audience is gonna come out on this. I mean, look, a case can be made, Jordan, here, devil's advocate. Isn't the conflict of interest now done since his brother's effectively banished from politics? I don't know that any other Cuomos will be popping up. So are we now free and clear?
Wouldn't that though reflect his character? Like, wouldn't that show that this is somebody who you would need to worry about going forward? If there is, some personal connection, brother or not, to me, that's like, okay, this is a permanent red flag that he was, that's pretty egregious. That's a huge story, and he's advising the press strategy, and then all of a sudden remaining quiet about it after having this guy on before and saying he can cover him objectively. That was his justification for those interviews at the onset of COVID. So I would show this as a character flaw.
Yeah. Well, I wonder to what extent any polling has been done about what his audience actually think. I mean, clearly we're not, regular members of his audience or anything like that. I wonder what they think about that, if they have a problem with it. I'm guessing not. There tends to be loyalty in those sorts of communities, whether misplaced or not. But anyway, that poll is up. We'll give you the results at some point. I don't expect that it's going to happen, certainly. And we'll see if this leads to any policy change in terms of CNN and conflicts of interest between its hosts and members of politicians. The entire thing is just far too incestuous. That I think is the far bigger problem than just Chris Cuomo. The fact that you could produce something where you have the governor and the host from the same spot. But anyway, that's what I think. Okay, everybody on the linear platforms, thank you for watching us. We are out of time for you, but if you're on Twitch or on YouTube, we do have a lot more to talk about. Including anti-mask harassment, Nancy Pelosi's finances, and child marriage. So, that's gonna be fun. We'll be back after this. Welcome back, everyone. We've still got a half hour to go of the Damage Report with me, John Iadarola, and Jordan Uhl. Jordan, you are a really chill guy. Has anyone ever told you that? Really chill to talk politics with you, man.
Heard that around, yeah.
You have, yeah. Anyway, before we jump back into the news, I did want to let you know about a few things that are coming up, including that, as always, after this program, Indisputable will be coming up with Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Adrian Lawrence, as always on Tuesdays, and there will be a debate with Quill Robinson. That is available either at twitch.tv/TYT or youtube.com/indisputable-TYT. Again, right after the Damage Report. Hey, what do you know? An episode of Deep Dive is coming up later on. Jordan, if people weren't watching earlier, what can they expect on Deep Dive today?
Yeah, today at 4 Eastern, 1 Pacific, right here on TYT's Twitch channel, Mike Preisner of the Empire Files will be joining me. We'll talk about the Afghanistan withdrawal, the need to bring in refugees from the country, his time in the service, and why he is now anti-war. All of that fun stuff. You don't want to miss it.
Nice. I wanted to remind people, I know you're watching this right now, or else you wouldn't be hearing me. It's sort of definitional, but as always, if you'd like to consume the Damage Report as a podcast, that is a possibility. Our show is available on the Acast app. You're seeing the different programming that is available, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Way back in the day, for years, I listened to the Young Turks as a podcast before I started working here. Big fan of podcasts still. Jordan, what are some podcasts you listen to?
I'm mostly an audiobook guy these days. I haven't listened to podcasts in a while. I mean, I listen to Chapo every now and then. Every once in a while, I try to listen to the Majority Report has a good like morning synthesis. It's called the AM Quickie, I think, or the Morning Quickie. I like that, but mostly just I'm an audiobook. And then of course I watch the Damage Report, John. That's how I start my day.
You don't, you lying.
I do. I watch a lot. I do find myself feeling great. It's better than meetings.
That's true. Actually, I was just listening to an episode of you appearing on the Power Report with Dan Evans. Yeah, I watched your episode. I listened to the episode with Emma Vigeland. Both are great. Power Report's great. I mostly go to podcasts for non-political stuff. There's this Beyond the Screenplay. They do analysis of movies. I like that sort of thing. But anyway, also the multicast is done. You know what I'm gonna say. I've been saying it for a week. If you wanna watch the Young Turks live stream, you can go to youtube.com/theyoungturks, freely available, no subscribership or membership or anything like that required. But it is no longer streaming on the Damage Report YouTube channel. So that is true. Anyway, with that, why don't we jump back into the news? We're gonna launch directly into this.
I respect freedom. I know, look, he's disrespecting an elderly.
You know what I respect? I respect freedom.
Because
what do you respect? What do you respect?
Hold on.
Take a seat. Sit down. Sit the down. That's right.
I have a 40-year-old son. You're probably not even.
As John Oliver would say, cool. So that apparently took place on a New York City subway. It was a man refusing to wear a mask, which is one thing. Another thing, though, is verbally abusing an elderly woman who chooses to be masked and then attacking the people who stand up for her, shouting that you love freedom and then insisting that other people sit down. They're apparently not free to stand. But Jordan, that guy has apparently now been identified. There's a TikToker who's apparently become a bit of a cyber sleuth, identifying people like that. What are your thoughts?
I mean, this guy's really pathetic. Unfortunately, no one else in the train stepped in to defend this lady, which really sucks. It seems like both people who he dealt with were either older or at least middle-aged and older women. Which is, it speaks volumes about his character and how he ultimately sees himself. That an elderly woman is who he ended up picking on. If you really want to punch down, I mean, cool, go for it, man. But yeah, he looked like really pathetic, contemptuous creature. I guess he had been at some sort of like Proud Boy type rally, which is not surprising. But look, man, it sucks.
Oh,
wearing a mask isn't like fun. It's certainly not fun wearing one at the gym, but we all got to do it. And these people are putting themselves before everyone else. And it just really exemplifies who he is.
Yeah, and that it's literally an elderly person, the people who are, uniquely susceptible to COVID. She's trying to protect herself. She has to be on the subway. I'm sure she'd prefer not to, but so you get in her face as you're unmasked. And I'm gonna guess the sort of guy that's probably irresponsible in other ways when it comes to COVID. So that's certainly a choice. But I'm curious about your thoughts about the fact that they tracked down this guy and apparently contacted his job. I thought I had read that he was fired. I'm not sure that is actually the case, but in terms of like strategy, when people like this are identified, and it's becoming more common, you see videos like this pretty much every day around topics like race and topics like COVID. Should they be tracked down? Should we be trying to make examples of them? What do you think about how people should react to these sorts of things when they come across them?
It depends. I don't think there's a uniform, like universal rule for this kind of stuff. I'm generally not into it because I don't think it's a good idea for an internet mob, a vigilante internet mob, to go track down people because they're not always the most careful. For instance, let me preface this: racism definitely exists, and people are racist and terrible. At the Colorado Rockies game a couple weeks ago, there was a misunderstood case of somebody yelling out the mascot's name and people thinking he was saying a racial slur. He is seen on camera in the game footage pointing at the mascot, looking away from the game, pointing at the mascot, yelling at the mascot's name, which I guess in some muffled footage could be interpreted as a racial slur. That didn't stop people from saying, oh, you know what, maybe he's looking at something else and doing something else. No, they found out who this guy was, tracked him down, and came for his head online. Only later did the team and Major League Baseball say, hey, you know what? Our bad. The Rockies initially put out a statement condemning it. So they really added fuel to the fire, and they were all wrong. So maybe we could just pause for a second. Maybe we don't need to and I saw a TikTok, someone was bragging about contacting every member of this guy's family. Why?
Whoa.
Why? They didn't do anything. I'm sure they already know his family member is shitty. Who cares? What are you doing? It's really, really weird that people take this upon themselves to just go out of their way to just, obliterate people's lives. He sucks. I don't think good things should happen to him. I also don't think separately that the internet needs to act in a vigilante mob sort of way.
Yeah, especially in cases where you said where people could mishear something, think they're hearing something else. Like a few seconds ago, people might have thought that you just swore, but you didn't actually. They were mishearing that. But anyway, just kidding. Yeah, I had to look up what the actual mascot for the Rockies is because I did not know. But anyway, yeah, I think that that's a good point. Certainly, there can be stuff that's out of context or wrong. There can also be people who are believed to be identified that are not actually those people. Do we want to be that sort of society? And again, I think that there's a very big difference between, for instance, there was the Central Park Karen who was literally calling the cops on someone, and the film showed that she was lying about what was going on. So yes, we do need to understand context as well. I think that that's a wise thing that Jordan is saying there. That said, why don't we jump to something completely different? Curious what Jordan is going to think about this. Last year was obviously very rough financially for a lot of people. If you lost your job or weren't able to work for a period of time, it might have been difficult to even pay your rent. A lot of people lost a lot financially, but some people did quite well. We've talked previously about how many billionaires did in 2020. But there are other people not quite at that level of financial success. For instance, Nancy Pelosi did okay. Her wealth grew $16.7 million through the course of 2020. The combined net worth of Nancy Pelosi and her husband, Paul. Sludge estimates that her 2020 net worth was $190.9 million. That was done by calculating the mean of the minimum and maximum reported values of their total disclosed assets. Their estimated net worth jumped by 16.2% in 2020, and we can bring up a chart showing its growth over time. Now, of course, as always, these are estimates of net worth. It is possible, maybe even likely, that it's an overestimate, but clearly they both did well in 2020 and overall are doing quite fine. And I understand, Jordan, this is hardly the first time we've talked about the fact that our representatives tend to be quite wealthy, but it is still shocking to me that we would choose a representative who financially has as little in common with us as like a random animal in the forest. Like it's that level of disconnect. She is shockingly wealthy. Even I knew that she was wealthy. I had no idea that she had this much money though.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to, and I saw people in the chat just mention this, but I'm thinking back to the middle of the pandemic and lockdown when everyone is struggling. Millions of people have lost their jobs. People aren't getting paid. A very meager response from Congress in terms of a stimulus check. And she does an interview with James Corden in front of like a really expensive stainless steel, several $1,000 fridge, and opens her freezer and it's full of, like $12 or $13 pints of ice cream. And people are like, wow, that's really out of touch. And all of these like yes queen liberals were like, she's just doing self-care. She's allowed to have a little bit of a treat. She works hard. Little did they know, and not that they would care in the end, but like this is somebody who is one of the richest members of Congress and who has time and time again blocked progressive reforms, even in that moment, blocked a paycheck guarantee from the Congressional Progressive Caucus. So things that would have helped the material conditions of workers around the country, she blocked. And just as we saw recently, came out of left field and all of a sudden was like, no, we can't cancel student loan debt because her extremely wealthy campaign donors told her this is what the stance that you should take. This is not somebody who advocates for your best interest, for the interests of the people watching, for the interests of people working in this country, for anybody. She works on behalf of corporate interests. That's it, plain and simple. And that's why she has gotten so unbelievably wealthy at her time in Congress, where she's not paid a lot relative to any other executive position in this country.
Yeah, 100%. I looked it up, by the way. It was a $24,000 fridge, which, like, for a 5-star restaurant, maybe. I don't even think then.
That's more than many people's cars for a fridge.
And the ice cream is $12 a pint. How good could it possibly be? I'm a Ben and Jerry's man. I think they're a little bit expensive, $5, $4, something like that. I don't think they're twice as good. I just don't think it. I can't accept it. You got something that can beat Netflix and chilled? I don't think so. But anyway, let's talk a little bit more about the Pelosi. So much of their money is tied up in real estate. So, as we're in a real estate crisis, I'm sure that they're going to be super ready to radically reconfigure all of that. Let's see, they also have a vineyard in Napa from which they earn up to $1 million annually from grape sales. So, regular people. The husband also, Paul Pelosi, frequent trader of corporate stocks. Among his top holdings in 2020 were shares worth up to $25 million apiece in Apple, Amazon, and Visa, $5 million apiece in Comcast, Walt Disney, Square, Salesforce, PayPal, and CrowdStrike. So again, when so much of your wealth is bound up in things like real estate in these massive corporations, it's so weird that they don't really want to rock the boat. And yet, Jordan, we regularly send people, not necessarily that are as wealthy as Nancy Pelosi, but people who are, again, very disconnected from the concerns of regular people. We send them to office over and over and over again. People like Joe Manchin, who used to be on corporate boards and all that. Like when we have someone like a Cori Bush, it's shocking because for once we've chosen someone sort of like us. Why do we allow it? Why do we send people so insulated from the concerns of real working people and then get kind of shocked that in office they're not actually they're not working for us? It sickens me that they're so successful that they can figure out an advertising strategy or a PR strategy or a philosophical and ideological strategy that gets people to not question how someone worth a couple $100 million could possibly represent them.
I mean, a good example of why that happens just took place in Ohio in the 11th district. Nina Turner was running on a platform that centered workers and centered the average American. And after pulling ahead and looking like she was going to coast to victory,
Mhm.
a Democratic super PAC got involved, spent a couple of them spent in total a couple $1 million, most of which attacked Nina Turner, and they took money from Republican billionaires and corporate interests to attack Nina Turner. And after 4 years of bemoaning anybody who supported Trump, Trump's friends were some of the people that funded this effort. And it was radio silence from Democrats because they don't actually care. That's all kayfabe. That is wrestling. They want you to be focused on the Republicans and not look at what they're doing. But in the end, when it comes down to a decision between someone who's going to help further corporate interests or someone who's going to advocate on your behalf, they will use all their tools at their disposal, even working with Republicans, to keep someone who's working on behalf of your interests at bay. And that's what they did with Nina Turner.
Yeah, it's just an investment, and it'll definitely pay off. Yeah, they're gonna make those millions back many times over. Okay, we've got a little bit of time. You know what? I'm gonna pull a bit of an audible here. Why don't we skip to the H block? No?
H block.
Okay, good. Okay, let's do it. Okay, let's do that. An actual trip to Mars might not be happening anytime soon, certainly if you're not a billionaire. But if you'd like to experience what it might be like, that opportunity is now opening up. So I read this on CNN. If you've ever dreamed of what it might be like to live on another world, you have your chance. Applications now open to participate as a crew member in NASA's first 1-year simulation of living on Mars. If you succeed, you'll be one of 4 people living and working in a habitat called Mars Dune Alpha at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston. Applications are open now through September 17th, and the mission is slated to begin in fall 2022. So, Jordan, this is going to be a 1-year mission of these 4 individuals. Can we jump ahead to the beginning, the picture of the habitats being built? Because I want to give you an idea of, it's not a lot of space. So they're being sort of 3D built there. You're gonna be there for a year. It's 1,700 square feet. So like that seems like a fairly large house, I guess. What do you think about this as an experiment? Are you the sort of person that would be at all interested in participating in something like this? Effectively like a biodome, but for Mars?
No, I would rather just go. Like, send me to the moon. I would rather go. Just whatever. If it sucks, okay. Like I don't want to live in a warehouse.
You wouldn't want to know.
No, yeah. If it sucks, it's probably gonna suck. There's no Wi-Fi there, so like it's not gonna be great. But I would love to see space. I'm all about it. I think space exploration is fun and interesting and great. I wish that we would do it through the government and not private billionaires. But I think it's a novel concept. I think I love it. I'm fascinated by it. I would love to go to space. I'm not interested in a warehouse in Texas, which that's what it seems to be.
It does seem kind of like that. So the billionaire stuff hasn't soured you on space exploration?
I mean, it definitely has tainted it. And I think like that people now see that as how we explore space going forward stinks, because we've had the technology to do what they've been doing for decades at a fraction of the cost. I mean, we're only going to continue to enrich people. And now, I mean, so, I think Musk got a moon rover, or he's got some sort of rover contract from NASA. And Bezos tried everything, including basically like bribing the government to get it, still didn't get it. And now he's suing the government because he wants it so bad. So it's just like, it's such a waste of our resources when we could just be funneling this money into NASA. It's really, really frustrating.
Yeah. Look, I am actually interested in Mars rovers. I'm also interested in affordable mass production electric vehicles that regular people can actually afford to buy. I think both are cool. Maybe we could do both. Maybe Musk could do that one. Maybe he could do that. Like, you make cars already. That seems doable. Anyway, two potential downsides here. One, I forget exactly who it was that said this. Because I grew up watching Star Trek and Star Wars. I love the idea of living on another planet or whatever. Although again, it has been tainted by the billionaires. But I heard it put once that best case scenario, living on Mars would be like living in an airport. Worst case scenario, living on Mars would be like living in an airplane. And that tainted it a little bit. Like, I don't like the idea of either of those. But also, I'm I'm not qualified. Maybe Jordan is. I don't know your educational background, but I'm not qualified because the agency is looking for highly motivated US citizens or permanent residents between 30 and 55 years old who are healthy and non-smokers. I don't smoke, but clearly not healthy. But more importantly, a master's degree in a STEM field such as engineering, mathematics, or biological, physical, or computer science from an accredited institution with at least 2 years of professional STEM experience or a minimum of 1,000 hours piloting an aircraft is required, which I definitely get for astronauts. But to your previous point, Jordan, I have to have 1,000 hours of piloting a plane to live in that warehouse. That seems unfair. I think this is like a lot of like for college students going out into the job force. It's like, I think your expectations are a bit too high for what you'll be having me do.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the master's. You had me until the master's in the STEM. My master's is not in STEM, so unfortunately, I can't go live in the dream warehouse. So
yeah,
that stinks. But yeah, it does seem like a weird qualification for someone who's probably just going to be doing data entry. I mean, just like that's like intern level stuff, right? It's going to be hard to find good applicants who aren't already in their talent pool or who aren't, like vying for a later position within the administration. I don't know. That's weird.
I don't know. It is, and they say they're going to be doing like experiments and simulated spacewalks, but it's going to be a walk in a warehouse, I think. But anyway, and by the way, NASA, first of all, you need media too. You don't want a YouTuber like broadcasting there. You want people to pay attention to this. We can get some drama going on. Let's stream when we're there.
Send Brett down there. Hey, what's up, NASA? It's your boy Brett here from the warehouse.
Let's send Brett to Mars, or at least to a warehouse in Houston. I could go for that. Anyway, Jordan, we're rapidly running out of time, so I want to thank you as always for joining us. Give you an opportunity to once again plug Deep Dive. I know it's coming up soon, and it seems timely, the conversation that you're going to be having.
It does. 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. Twitch.tv/TYT. Do not miss it. We'll be talking about Afghanistan with Mike Preisner of the Empire Files. It's going to be great.
Awesome. Jordan, as always, thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
And for those of you watching, the fun continues, although this show will not. Indisputable is coming up in just a few minutes. Dr. Rashad Ritchie, Adrian Lawrence, you know it's gonna be awesome. You're not gonna wanna miss it. And with that, you know what? I think we have a minute. I can read a couple of super chats, right? Oh, there was a big super chat from Stone Eagle Dragon who said, my boss said they are just violent people and has always been at war and always will be. I just replied with, and the Crusades didn't have anything to do with invading white people and a few other points. And he just ignored all of it. And where's the Jordan emoji? That's a good point. We do have to get on that. Although on Twitch, we definitely do have one. Even for one of him responding to accidentally swearing, which came up on today's program. But anyway, thank you for your super chat. Thank you everybody for watching. Until next time, stay safe out there, stay sane out there. We'll see you soon.
Yep, you know what time it is. Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Rashad Ritchie. Good to be with you. We have a lot of show today, okay? Breaking down news of the day. Adrienne Lawrence, attorney at law, TYT contributor, and author. Before we go to our dear sister, my top story for today. A landlord killed 2 tenants and tried to kill a third because he wanted his rent paid. Well, newsflash, he's not getting it now. And because he's been arrested, ladies and gentlemen, he will have a rent-free rest of his life. Let's put up a picture of this bozo who decided it was a good idea to kill individuals allegedly based on their inability to pay rent. The Las Vegas homeowner accused of shooting 3 live-in tenants after an argument over unpaid rent made statements that he did not want to go through an eviction proceeding and wanted to handle things, and I quote, his way, a prosecutor told a judge on Wednesday. The witness described for police Arnaldo Lozano Sanchez going into a bedroom, a woman pleading for her life, multiple gunshots, and the man who was shot 9 times emerging and running for his life. Let's put up a picture of this alleged killer again. That's him. Mr. Sanchez was arrested early Tuesday in his small pink home after police found 1 woman dead outside, the man who had been shot 9 times coming out the door, and the woman dead in a bedroom. He tried to kill the third, obviously. The evidence clearly shows, this is according to the prosecutor, the evidence clearly shows at this early stage that Lozano Sanchez had a motive, he had the opportunity, and he actually did commit 2 murders as well as an attempted murder with a deadly weapon. He is currently being held without bond. At this point, there has not been a new development of the story. We will continue to watch this story, but here's a reality, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a reality. You have complaints happening all across the United States of America that landlords are doing extreme criminality against their tenants. Now, they may not have gone as far as this guy, okay? This evil SOB. They didn't go that far. But what they're doing, according to the record, they are trading sex for rent. They are asking or demanding that certain individuals who are renting from them engage in criminal activity themselves in order to pay for rent. This is happening across the board. And these landlords are using the excuse of unpaid rent in order to exhibit their devilish and criminal activity. Adrienne Lawrence, you see this for what it is. What are your thoughts about it?
I think that this is extremely, it's really disheartening because here we have this cold-blooded murder, and at least the excuse used is they're not paying rent. For landlords to engage in self-help, is problematic to begin with, where they should use the civil eviction process. But to go this far to engage in these murderous acts is wild. And also, as you have observed, which you're completely accurate, landlords for the last year plus, even though they've been doing it since the beginning of time, they've been taking advantage of illicit means, sexual harassment, sex acts, criminality in exchange for not paying rent, because a lot of people can't. According to the Aspen Institute, a 2020 report found that an estimated 30 to 40 million people in the United States are at risk of being evicted due to the COVID-19 crisis. We have people who are extremely vulnerable, could possibly lose their homes and ability to shield themselves from the elements, and they are being exploited. And in this case, they're being murdered. It is not okay.
Yeah, and it also shows how they're not looking at these individuals as human beings.
Nope.
Where is the humanity at? I understand you may be upset somebody didn't pay rent. You may have some issues paying your bills, but you have a place to stay. Remember, these were live-in tenants. They were all living there. You would prefer to end their lives and in the process, de facto ending yours because you could not collect rent payment that day? How crazy is that? Okay, shifting gears. This story has gone viral. The LAPD, an LAPD cop has punched a man who was on a gurney. handcuffed to a gurney. Let's just go to the video first.
Bitch! Don't do that again with any officer. Right, got it. And here's fitness. If you don't let me know, I can put it up. Grab a stiffness.
I don't give a damn what he did. I don't give a damn if it was a carjacking or whatever the narrative currently is. The man was handcuffed. I don't care that he called the cop the B word. He has a constitutional right to be a jerk. He was not in a position to harm or injure that police officer. What that cop did was retaliation, and that is against the law. That was a physical assault on this young man who was handcuffed on a gurney. Now, I'm going to play this video again because I want you to notice something, okay? I want you to notice that the paramedics were not shocked. I want you to notice that the other officers were not appalled by this activity. I also want you to notice two other things. That there's one cop who has a smirk on his face while this is happening, like he wants to laugh at the situation. And then you have another officer who did in fact intervene. He was wearing a mask, he came up, he literally touched his partner there and he walked him away from that scene. That's your duty, to intervene in real time, okay? Now, here's what should have happened. The damn cop should have been arrested. Now, that's what I'm waiting for. That's the day I'm waiting to report. When something like that happens and the guy who walks up, the individual who intervenes, also says, put your hands behind your back. That's what I want to see, all right? Here's the video again and watch for those dynamics.
Bitch! Don't do that again with any officer. Right, got it. And here's fitness. If you don't let me know, I can put it up. Grab a stiffness.
All right, here we go. Here's some background. The incident happened Saturday after carjacking that ended in the city of San Fernando with the arrest of two suspects, according to an LAPD news release. The community member caught the incident on a video. This was a community member's video, which showed the officer striking one of the suspects who was in handcuffs and strapped to a gurney. Several officers were standing around the ambulance, as you saw, as the officer punched the suspect. At least one approached the officer to pull him back. The suspect was rolled into the ambulance with a spit bag over his head. It's unclear what injuries the suspect was being treated for or what prompted the officer to launch toward him. The officer was upset. He was mad. It's not justified whatsoever. The LAPD said it learned about the video on Sunday and immediately started investigating. The unnamed officer, and we'll get his name at some point, the unnamed officer is suspended until the investigation concludes, the police department said. We got Chief Moore. Chief Moore said in a news release, so let's put up a picture of Chief Moore. The images in the video are deeply disturbing. And while I must wait for the investigation to be completed, the department will act swiftly in any instance of excessive or unnecessary force. You know, it's really interesting to me that an entire agency who was built upon the notion that you must call a thing, okay? In order to arrest people, you have to call a thing. All of a sudden, when it comes to their own, they can't call a thing anymore. They have to wait on stuff, okay? Adrian, what are your thoughts here?
Well, just like you, I would like to see some assault charges filed because that officer had no reason whatsoever for doing what he did. That individual was completely and totally unable to defend themselves. And the thing with the LAPD is that they have a use of force department that is specialized for investigating these matters. So why we need to have all of these delays in time while this officer is suspended with pay, it just really speaks to the fact that our system is being exploited. Over the last 10 years, Los Angeles has paid out $330 million in settlements for police misconduct, including excessive force. That's $33 million a year.
Wow.
This is just, it's unnecessary. Individuals who cannot control their emotions, their behavior, and not run up on someone and punch them when they are unable to defend themselves should not be in a position to protect and serve.
You see, it's expensive to have bad cops on the roster. That's just a reality. It costs a lot of money in order to continue to employ these individuals. Yep. So you don't have a moral argument for them, you don't have a professional argument for them, and you don't have an economic argument for them. Why are they so well protected? Why are they so hard to get rid of, Adrian?
Well, I think because of their initial origin, it's this whole thought that we have to maintain this us versus them narrative, this fearing other groups, this, certain groups are dangerous or there is a danger to you. And when we continue to push those narratives, we continue to create justifications for keeping law enforcement around, even though just a small percentage of their work is actually preventing crime. The LAPD's budget is 1.8 billion. It went up from last year. And the fact is we could be using that money toward education, toward actual social services to, invest in our community. But unfortunately, we're investing in keeping a lot of people employed, and what they're doing is not necessarily helping our society advance.
That's right. If your city, if your county, if your state is bragging about hiring more officers, they are telling you that they are ineffective at addressing the issues of crime in that local community. If you want to brag about something, brag about the fact you don't need as many officers this year because crime is down so significantly in your community. When was the last time you heard a politician brag about that? And let me just keep it all the way 100, okay? Because these paramedics are not off the hook in my book, okay? Not one of them flinched when this happened. They are the first responders. They are the first responders. I get it. We already have talked about the cops here, okay? We know what their duty should be. And we know that what should have happened to the officer who committed assault. But for paramedics, for emergency responders, and I'm not saying that they are supposed to go toe-to-toe with the police, but at least have a reaction to a human being under your care being assaulted physically, already obviously injured. That's why they're in the gurney in the first place. It's not your job to determine if they deserve to be assaulted or not. It's not your job to determine it, even if they deserve to go to jail or not. Once that person is under your care, once that human being is under your authority as a healthcare worker, you have a reaction, damn it, if somebody assaults them like that under your care. None of these paramedics had a reaction. 90% of these cops had no reaction. One cop had a smirk on his face and the other one actually did intervene. Am I wrong here?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. The fact is that we do need every player in this system who is maintaining the systems of oppression to actually speak up, to stand up, to do something. And we often see where we have individuals who are in these positions and witness these things. We often see testifying, or we see the whole, just look the other way. No, there should be accountability across the board, but we have to institute that as a culture, as a society. And unfortunately, we're still in positions where we are giving individuals in law enforcement or other positions of power, we're giving them a pass so they continue to oppress individuals in society, and they're generally individuals from marginalized groups.
Yeah, and there you go, individuals generally from marginalized groups. The reason why this is a story, the reason why this cop has been suspended, the reason why there is an active investigation is because a bystander, somebody else, decided to record through their cell phone this incident. And I'm not sure if they thought something like this would happen, but it did. And that's why I encourage everyone and everyone who knows me personally, if you're riding with me and I see a police officer pull over somebody, I stop the car and I start recording. I don't intervene with the investigation if they're trying to figure out who the person is. I don't get involved in that, but I start recording because you never know. And the smartphone has become the unsung hero in so many of these cases across the United States of America.
And that's the thing, it's the right thing to do because I teach diversity, oppression systems, helping people understand racism, sexism, and whatnot. And that is also an observation I make in terms of how you can use your privilege and your allyship to help marginalized groups and individuals. And there are a number of people who will use their privilege by pulling over to the side and pulling out their iPhone to communicate essentially to the officer, even just implicitly, that you are being watched, that this could go viral and you could find yourself actually facing consequences, even if it's just a suspension with pay. But you cannot continue to get away with abusing people or violating their civil rights and no one knowing, you being able to sweep it under the carpet and claim it never happened. So now using your iPhone as an ally, that goes a long way.
That's right, and it's not always about catching something on camera, because the fact that your camera is present may have prevented something horrible from happening in the first place. And it keeps a monitor on the individuals who now will say, you know what? I have to modulate my behavior because somebody may be recording me, okay? That's a reality of the world we live in today. Naturally, we're looking at this case with the LAPD, but the truth is it's a microcosm, but it speaks to the macrocosm of what's happening with law enforcement. Here's what I do appreciate, Adrian. I do appreciate the fact that some of these officers are actually being held accountable. There's a case in Atlanta right now, it was recorded too, where a black male sergeant kicked a black female in the head while she was handcuffed, okay? Kicked her in the head. He's not facing any charges. Hell, he barely got fired. The officer who refused to intervene, she's able to keep her job, even though there is a duty to intervene clause on the books in the city of Atlanta. So you have a very similar scenario. Person handcuffed, officer assaults the individual who's on the ground and handcuffed, kicks her in the head. There's video evidence. Absolutely no criminal charges are forthcoming. Why the difference?
Well, I can tell you, we need accountability across the board, because the reality is that when we see individuals are attacked and they are people of color, and we understand how white supremacy works in the United States, we know that anybody can perpetuate it, can push it forward. And so we have to address these things. We have to acknowledge them, and we have to look at the institutions and the systems that we continue to advance to try our best at least to weed it out. But if we don't make the change that we need to, if we don't confront it and acknowledge what it is, nothing will change, and there will be no accountability, and people will continue to get hurt.
Well said. And speaking of black people who push the white supremacist agenda, the #1 white supremacist, Candace Owens, I got something about her next, all right? We got more, it's indisputable, stick and stay.
Well, the Young Turks, the Friday show is gonna be awesome. We're gonna help us over here. Drop it.
We became the first ever daily online web television show.
No, the Constitution is the very core of America. The fact that we don't spy on American citizens, that we get a warrant, that we go to a judge, that we have a procedure, that we have due process, that is America.
On top of it, they go, why don't they just stay at their own schools? You gotta realize something. These schools suck. They want people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ain't got no straps, you ain't got no boots.
He lit these fires in trash bins all around town out of frustration.
99th most viewed channel today on YouTube.
The Shorties Award.
Best web host.
We passed 1 billion views. Voice Award winner, News and Information Channel, The Young Turks. Oh, another Webby.
The Young Turks.
Can I curse? Yeah! For those of you watching on live stream, yes, we have adopted a pet iguana that showed up at our door.
Haunted version in the dark with our silhouettes.
Now let's get to the best line of the debate. And it was definitely the one against Fox. I told you we were coming.
I mean, you talk about it when it becomes a problem. Our lack of gun control is a problem.
Nonsense BS story is hurting that cause, and they need to wake up and recognize that they are being had by these people.
Biggest gang in America. Question is, how do we make sure that we blame the person who is dead? What kind of democracy is that?
We should never forget that the most powerful people in the world exploited the greatest tragedy in American history to go to war in a country that had a lot of oil.
Rolling thunder. That's what this show is.
Never in my life did I think I would like to see a dictator. But if there's going to be one, I want it to be Trump.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
Where's the line? We've crossed every line you can imagine.
We are a socialist country. It's socialism for the rich.
Tick-tock, tick-tock.
You don't have to know the truth, just believe what they tell you.
There is no bounds to their monstrous hypocrisy. Tick-tock. I think we're gonna win the Senate in 2020. And I think we're gonna have the House, and I think we're gonna have the presidency. Tick-tock. And in 2020, we're going to clean your clock. And we're gonna run you out of town
and we're gonna have an actual democracy in this country.
November of 2020 could also be potentially the greatest day of our lives. Let us whisper of a dream.
Say hi to the camera.
I don't like this.
Yep, welcome back. We got a lot of comments. Let me read as many as I can, okay? And thank you all for always joining the conversation. Make sure you stay after the show for Deep Dive with the big homie, Jordan Uhl. That is a great show. All right, TYT member, Mickey C, the Silver Hair Dragon. There is no excuse for him not getting murder one. Going into the bedroom with a loaded gun and shooting 9 times shows intent, first-degree murder. Next TYT reporter says, the medic stepped to the side so his patient could be assaulted. He needs to be fired too. Beans, they always say women are more emotional, but I don't think that's true. Men are clearly just as emotional. We just don't see them as weak for expressing it. And more importantly, we don't punish them for it. Case in point here. Interesting. YouTube super chat. Tyler Henrik says, Dr. Richie, I love the show, man. You're one of the best TV hosts of all time. Quick wit and straight facts. Thank you, Tyler, I appreciate that. Saren Anubis Ra. Okay, the Hispanic cop on the other side of the gurney looked like he was trying to stop the guy. Jeffrey Ritchie says, hashtag film the police. Yep. Trevor Watson, so this is America now. David Gordon says, dude, I am so high right now. I love you, Dr. Ritchie. And for the record, I am not his supplier. Ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't me. Okay, he got that on his own. Bernard the Kiwi Dragon. Geez, I wonder what would happen if a delirious, frail 80-year-old small lady lying in a hospital bed flipped off the officer. Yeah. Let's go to Twitch, Trekkie21. He was hoping that he could rent to someone who could pay. I wonder if he thought he could scare them into leaving without shooting them. Well, obviously that wasn't his goal. He shot everybody. Haiku Dragon. The one that smirked looked like he also waved the bad cop toward the patient. I didn't see that, but I'll look again for that. Donkey Teeth BTLS. All right, we're going to go investigate. Let's wait to see if this blows over. Such a traditional tactic, right? Let's investigate and see if people are still concerned about it later. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the #1 black white supremacist in the world, Candace Owens, is now all of a sudden black again. According to Candace Owens, she is demanding an apology from the American Booksellers Association. On August 11th, after CEO Allison Hill apologized to their readers, yes, apologized to their readers after the ABA, the company, accidentally promoted Owens' new book, Blackout, How Black America Can Make Its Escape, Second Escape from the Democratic Plantation. Let's put up a picture of this hero, CEO Allison Hill, okay? That's the person who apologized for making a mistake in her company promoting the book of Candace Owens. In an initial tweet, Owens said ABA labeled her book as racist and apologized for promoting it. I see no lies so far. This is the CEO, Allison Hill, who sees no irony in calling a black woman racist. Owens wrote over an image of Hill. My goodness. Let me count the ways here. So Candace Owens says that it's ironic that this white female would call the #1 black white supremacist in the world, Candace Owens, will call her book racist. And a few other things, by the way. Painful, I think was a terminology used. Candace Owens, do you not find it ironic that you raise money for the killers of Ahmaud Arbery? Do you not find it ironic that you, madam, called the black culture, my culture, that I belong to, the one that you don't want to belong to, a trash culture? Do you find it ironic that you gave praise to Hitler? You don't find these things ironic? That you say systemic racism does not exist. However, you've been paid money because of systemic racism stemming from your high school days and the NAACP locally helped you? That's just the tip of the iceberg. Let me continue. In response, Owens called on the ABA to apologize for denigrating her book. I am calling for a public apology from ABA Book and Allison Hill. It is an act of unspeakable, explicit racism for a white woman to send around an email slandering and denigrating an autobiographical book from a black woman who came from nothing, who cannot accept this racism. We cannot accept this racism, Owens wrote. Now, I mean, damn, Owens has found her inner Malcolm X. Somehow, all of a sudden, she is not just regular black, she's just super. Just, I can't believe a white woman is doing this to a black woman. But let me remind you, Candace Owens does not believe racism is real, according to what she said at a few other speeches. Here's one of them.
Stop taking away our self-confidence by telling us that we can't because of racism, because of slavery. I've never been a slave in this country. Stop telling us that we need to be obsessing over our past when we should be obsessing over our future and the potential that we have.
Candace Owens, I need you to stop obsessing over your past and start obsessing over your future. You've never been a slave. Racism isn't a real thing. They can't stop you. Let me give you some background as to how this happened. In an email sent to ABA members, okay, that's the book association. On August 5th, Ms. Hill, the CEO, explained why Owens' book cover appeared on an indie bestseller list instead of the correct cover for a book which had the same title, Blackout. So basically, you had a staff person make a mistake. They pulled it by the actual title of the book rather than using the ISBN number as per protocol. A staff person was filling in on creating the bestseller list while the staff person typically responsible was on vacation. Rather than pull the cover image by ISBN as they have been trained to do, they pulled the image by the title Blackout and didn't realize they pulled the wrong cover image, same title, different book, the letter said. The error resulted in the ABA promoting the book to hundreds of bookstores. According to Hill, the CEO, the act of mistakenly promoting Owens' book was an egregious, harmful act that caused violence and pain, one negligent, irresponsible, and racist, okay? So obviously, this CEO, she made an apology. It was a big mistake, but honest mistake. And now Candace Owens is saying that this white woman is holding this black woman back. The black woman who used to say systemic racism and prejudice, things like this don't actually exist. They do not happen to black people, but she has completely changed her tone. Why? Because she's trying to sell damn books. That's why. Adrian, what are your thoughts here?
I think you're absolutely right in terms of Candace Owen, essentially speaking out of both sides of her mouth. She'll say whatever suits the agenda at the moment to make sure that she sells books, gets money, gets all sorts of promotionals. The fact is that Candace Owens is a black woman and her blackness should not be denigrated just because she engages in white supremacy antics. But at the same time, I very much appreciate this other woman, Ms. Hill, who is the head of the ABA, who called it out and said, you know what, it was a mistake. And also unfortunately, it produced a lot of racist pain, vengeance, all sorts of things that's not representative of the ABA. And I know that they've had instances in the past where not too long ago, they promoted an anti-trans book. It's so incredibly important that when organizations get it wrong, that they publicly acknowledge the harm that they caused and they go ahead and get it right. Because there are individuals out there like Candace Owens who will try to leverage the wrong and use all sorts of antics and lies to manipulate it so that they can use that system to continue to better themselves and advance the problematic behavior in which they engage.
Very well said, very well said. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free! Back off!
I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
Yo, somebody help.
Windbread motherfucker.
Somebody help.
You know why you guys are all slant-eyed? Because you're inbreds.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm scared.
You see any, if you see any, they look like you. Either they're black or they're white or whatever.
Oh, now you're being racist.
They're over like this, you know what?
Oh, now you're being racist.
Normalized your sisters. You don't think I belong in this neighborhood? I got born here, bitch. I was born here. You're not gonna run me over, man. Wait until the cops come in. I'll show you the law. You stupid
break check me.
You stupid mother. What?
You got physical with me. You got physical with me.
Shut up, you inbred.
Oh, you
come
call me inbred.
Come over here.
Oh yeah, you call me inbred.
Be a man.
You got inbred.
Be a man.
Oh yeah.
Be a man.
Oh yeah.
Shut the up and stay over there, you bitch.
Don't worry about it.
You're an inbred. I'll slap the out of you, bro.
Do it.
I'll slap the.
Go ahead, I'm right here, bro.
All right. Reporting like a whore. You're a bitch, dude.
That's what I thought.
You're lucky. We're not back in the days. I would have left you dead right here, you bitch.
Word? Dead right here, right? Word?
Dead right there.
Right.
Little yellow. Little weak yellow.
Weak what?
Yeah, weak, bro. You're the weakest race on the planet.
Word.
The weakest.
Word.
I come from the strongest, bro.
Oh, I'm scared.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yellow and weak.
My dad would have said, that man there has an alligator mouth and a hummingbird ass. Now, here's what's happening. You have an individual, the one you're seeing, the male Karen, who is talking cash money trash. He was involved in a minor bicycle accident. According to the individual who was recording, he began this racist rant after the bicyclist swerved on 7th Avenue in Brooklyn and his car clipped his bicycle, okay? No one was injured. It was a very minor incident, but it caused this very major racist rant. Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Conflict happens. Arguments take place. It's part of the human experience. But when you decide that the argument itself is not strong enough for what you're experiencing, that you can't just debate someone or argue with someone based on what happened, that you then have to go to a place of racism, well, you may end up on indisputable. Adrian, what are your thoughts here?
I think this is absolutely disgusting, and it's important though that we see these things going on. I assume the individual who was filming is of Asian heritage, and the thing we have to bear in mind is that the anti-Asian sentiments they've been spiking. And we saw from 2019 to 2020 that the overall number of hate crimes, they declined overall, while the hate crimes targeting Asians increased. Anti-Asian hate crimes, they've increased by nearly 150% in 2020, mostly in New York and Los Angeles, that are supposed to be these diverse, welcoming meccas. Not the case at all. There are still a lot of ignorant mindsets of people who are attacking other people because of the way that they look, because of their heritage, of who they are. That is completely unacceptable. And this individual, just because he was involved in some minor crash, he has to take it to the level of let me voice all of this racist ignorance against you. That is absolutely disgusting. And I hope he's held accountable on all levels, as this video should go around and people need to know who this guy is.
Yeah, and you saw also the disregard for the humanity of the person, right? Because he's putting his finger up and saying that if we were back in the day, you'll be dead right now. Wait a minute, over somebody clipping your bicycle and you don't even have an injury? You wanna end the life of this brother because of that? And it seems to me that individuals like this, Mel Karen, they already carry around this sentiment that everybody is less than who does not look like them or think like them or believe like them. What are your thoughts?
No, you're absolutely right. And they're holding this mentality, yet they're the first ones to say, oh, I'm not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. But clearly you get to see in instances like this that no, this is the person's sentiment. This is what they believe. They believe there's a racial hierarchy and anyone beneath them or beneath whiteness is a problem or is some in way unacceptable or intolerable, and that they're infringing on his ability to do whatever he wants. Either way, this behavior is disgusting and it's not okay. And again, I hope that this individual is held accountable for essentially unleashing who he is on society on camera.
Yeah, good thing we're able to expose them. There's a theory called group status downgrade theory. And that theory basically says that when a particular group feels as if their status is being downgraded because of social factors, they would do the unthinkable in order to try to retain their status position. But what it proves is that they understand that they were existing in a privileged status in the first place. If you are threatened by a status downgrade situation, that means that you believe that you actually had a privileged status to begin with. And that's what you see happening with a lot of white male fragility all across the United States and beyond. We got more on the other side. It's indisputable. Stick and stay.
We are on to something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free healthcare for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer healthcare, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a penny.
Absolutely no.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar, and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now, you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's plant your change. And if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information, and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
What's happening? Welcome back. Let's go to some of these amazing viewer comments. TYT member Jam says, no, you know, the #1 black white supremacist in the country is Jesse Lee Peterson. That brother made the sunken place his sanctuary. I can see that. Cray Cray Souffle. I was wondering when that girl was going to finally acknowledge that invention called a mirror. YouTube super chat. Kelly O'Hara. This is my poet and you know it. What Karen said hurt my head. All that noise and the complete lack of poise. Trying to be the master race, but just a whole damn disgrace. If I had a mic, I would drop it and say bars. Okay, good stuff. Trevor Watson. Again, this is America now. Yeah. Carrie Venus, thank you for that, Carrie. Renee Moncayo. No barbecue for Karen Owens. Doesn't that just roll off the tongue? Karen Owens. Honestly, I may just change the segment to I wish a Candace would. Twyla Nesky says, Candace Owens deserves an Olympic medal for those backflips and contortions. Agreed. Twitch, Big Boy Raps. Doesn't she call black people racist? Yes. Donkey Teeth, is it Beatles, BTLS? The only way Candace would find irony is if she's paid to. And listen, you gotta come with the right price also, all right? We got more. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a restaurant manager who was absolutely okay with his employees, white employees, calling black people the N-word. Completely okay with it, 100% defended it. Now, before I get into this story, that manager and the other employee, they have been fired, okay? A TikToker named Angel Akeem says her manager, Raymond, at Saltgrass Steakhouse in Lubbock, Texas, told her black people can't dictate who can and cannot say the N-word. This conversation took place when Angel said she heard a white busboy call a black busboy the N-word and went to report it to Raymond, the manager. Here's how that conversation went with the manager of this establishment.
Really is, you cannot tell them, no, you're wrong, because you do not live your life every day looking like me.
I have nephews and nieces that are black.
You know, that is one thing. Every single person who is ignorant to
But we're confused totally right now, okay? Because perspective is two different things.
When he said the N-word, that buster, he did not use it as a term of endearment. He used it to degrade that other buster. It should have never even came out of his mouth. He should not ever think it. He should never repeat it.
I don't understand why this is difficult for the supervisor to understand, okay? White people calling black people the N-word, that's a no-no. That's a no-no. So that manager was immediately terminated. The other busboy, the one that was empowered to call black people the N-word, that person has been terminated as well. According to International Business Times, the video instantly went viral with several users accusing the restaurant of employing a racist manager and leaving negative reviews on its Yelp page, okay? The restaurant's business manager later replied to the post saying that they had zero tolerance for discrimination and that the manager, as well as the white busboy, were immediately terminated following an internal investigation. The full reply given by the restaurant's business manager says, and I quote, "We have zero tolerance for discrimination at our company. We were as shocked and appalled as anyone when this matter came to our attention and immediately began a thorough and swift investigation. As a result, the employees involved were immediately terminated." Well, good for them. Good for them. Quite obvious that this was a culture of racism being protected by the management who was involved, and obviously giving power to the individual who actually was caught using the N-word. Madam Attorney, you got some background in employment stuff like this. Did the company do the right thing here swiftly enough?
Oh, without question, the company did the right thing, but I doubt this would have happened unless it had gone viral. Because the vast majority of companies won't do anything necessarily because they're not facing significant risk when it comes to lawsuits for civil rights violations in the workplace. Because the law has essentially been set up in a way that you would have to be called the N-word every day for hours at a time in order to have a case. But to experience bouts of racism, it's not enough. And also too, one thing I want to address is what the manager had said, which is that, I think he said like 8 nieces and nephews who are black, something of that measure. A lot of people who have issues with racism, their first go-to will always be proximity to people of color. They will always try to cite that, I have black friends, I have black nephews, I dated a black girl in college. All of those things have nothing to do with whether you promote white supremacy or engage in racism. You can have all the friends you want of all different colors, backgrounds, gender, ages, and sizes. That does not make you exempt from systems of oppression. And so if you find yourself being like that manager out there, please check yourself because you are problematic.
Yeah, and all of his black family members, they know he's racist too. I promise you that. Everybody around him, they are well aware that he's a racist individual, okay? Let me shift gears because this actually had a decent ending. There's a Michigan man accused of jumping on the back of a black father who attempted to protect his kids at a hotel pool. The Michigan man that you're seeing, his name is Joel Venema. This Michigan man has been hit with 3 charges, including ethnic intimidation, after he allegedly yelled racial slurs and attacked a black father at the pool of a hotel. Let me put up a picture of the black father who was trying to be protective. His name is Jackie Beard Jr. Him and his family were hanging out at the pool when this other individual arrived and started playing with his own children, slamming them into the pool and making the pool unsafe for other children who were inside of the pool. So here's what happened. The black male, being a responsible parent, decided to say, hey guy, you may want to be careful here, okay? This is going to possibly injure someone. Eventually Beard said that Venema started treating his kids so roughly that Beard, the black male, felt compelled to walk over and ask him to stay away from his own children, at which point the assault began. Here's what happened in the assault according to the story. He's like, F you, N-word, F you, N-word, I'm going to kill you, N-word, Beard said. Trying to de-escalate the situation, Beard said he started walking away. But Venema wasn't done. allegedly jumping on Boebert's back and putting him in a chokehold. He was like, I'm going to kill you, N-word, N-word, you are going to die tonight. I'm like, no, I'm not, Boebert said. The court document said Venema was obviously intoxicated, jumped Boebert twice in front of his 3 kids. As Boebert was beginning to black out from the chokehold, other guests at the pool actually broke up the scuffle and called the authorities. However, after being taken into custody, he continued to use racial slurs toward the Grand Rapids police officer and another arrestee who was black. So let me remind you, ladies and gentlemen, alcohol does not make you racist. It does not. Alcohol does not make you racist. It gives you liquid courage to say what's already in your soul, what's already inside of you. Now think about this. This man is so racist that the idea of a black male father simply telling him, listen, you have to calm down. You are making it dangerous for my children. He feels like that black man doesn't have a right to tell him anything. You see, to him, that is a status downgrade to listen to a black man. So what is his response here? He is such a racist individual that his response is, I now have to kill this father in front of his children. Think about how deep that is. And it doesn't just stop there. He's willing to kill this human being in front of his own children. That's how deep and evil the racism is inside of him. This man walking around every day of his life with this level of racism inside of him. Do you think if he had access to a gun, this would be a different story? It would be. He didn't have access to a gun at that moment. Adrian, what are your thoughts?
No, you're absolutely spot on. The fact is that this white man, he had essentially been indoctrinated to the belief so much that a black person couldn't, quote unquote, challenge him. When that black person is simply saying, can you please step away from my children? I don't feel that you're treating them in a way that's safe, that was too much, that he had to threaten to kill him. These are things that happen, unfortunately, every day. And this situation could have ended very, very differently, whether the gentleman had a gun or not. If it was maybe a decade ago, even with the white man's word against the black man's word, if it wasn't documented, we don't know how it could have ended. But one thing we do definitely know is that Michigan has some problems when it comes to hate crimes. You know, it had the 5th most in the nation in 2019, where there were 313 racially motivated hate crimes that were logged against people in Michigan. It was a 10% increase from 2018. What we do is we have a lot of, unfortunately, underlying racial sentiments that are so incredibly negative and adverse that people are responding in ways of just ultimate violence and feeling like, how dare you even have the nerve to speak to me? You are so beneath me. And when you have this level of vitriol that is racially motivated, what you have is a lot of dangerous people walking around our society who can't even interact in a normal level. And in this situation, thank God that this black father is safe and okay, because it could have ended up essentially as a modern day lynching.
Absolutely right, and the witnesses were there. They were able to confirm based on witness testimony what happened. But think about this, Adrian. The black male literally walked away. He walked away in order to de-escalate the argument that started to happen. He walked away. And this white male, with all of his anger and racism, decided to jump on his back and try to kill him, okay? I can't neglect to highlight the politics of our country presently. And here's why. You have political leaders, they call themselves leaders. You have political leaders in this country who would continue to stoke the flames of that kind of racism in order to meet their own political agenda. Because they need a certain amount of people like that to be supportive of their political candidacy.
Yep, we see it all the time now with individuals who are members of Congress, and the subtle comments that they make, all of the microaggressions, all of these things are stoking this fear that was essentially, it was amplified by Donald Trump, and it made it so it was okay to do these things publicly. A lot of people saw that, and that continues to be promulgated by the actions of people, like you said, who call themselves leaders. And it makes the United States very dangerous for a lot of us, especially individuals who don't subscribe to this whole heteronormativity or traditional gender roles, or even just have a different melanin count. And we have to realize that this leadership is taking us in a bad direction. We are going to end up in a situation where the United States essentially it just implodes because we are allowing this us-them narrative to continue to reign.
Yeah, and this is not sustainable. You know this. Actions like this, and they're not happening in silos. They are systemic, they are connected, they have been nationalized. These activities are not sustainable in a country like America, okay? Because we already had a bunch of stuff wrong in the first place. So we don't have the level of resiliency that we should have in this country, because we decided not to treat this as the evil that it actually was, right? And so you don't have that factor in your favor now. And you have individuals who are willing to exploit the reality of racism, the reality of that level of evil in order to meet their own political agenda, rather than being true leaders and challenging that notion and trying to course correct the social construct that you see unfolding before your eyes.
Yep, and with the census numbers coming out, essentially showing the diminishing numbers of the white population and the increased numbers of individuals of more than one racial group, and you see the numbers rising. And the fact that the demographics are changing, as has always happened over the course of the United States history, but there are people in positions of power who do not want to see those changes, and thus they will continue to create these narratives to bolster them and to essentially make the United States dangerous for people like you and me.
Very well said. Adrian, always a pleasure having you on Indisputable. Tell people how they can get your book, check out your work, follow you on social media.
All right, you can get my book, Staying in the Game, the playbook for beating workplace sexual harassment, at the TYT store, as well as anywhere books are sold. And you can hit me up on Twitter at Adrian Law, on Instagram at Adrian Lawrence.
I don't have a book out yet, Adrian, but I got a dope ass I Wish a Karen Wood shirt coming in just a few days, all right?
Cannot wait.
Thank you so much, dear sister, I appreciate you. We got more, it's Indisputable, stick and stay.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive, and you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're gonna do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing. And thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Let me read some of these amazing comments. Okay, we got a lot of them. TYT member, cognitive dissonance is a hell of a drug, says, if I say so-and-so made me feel super uncomfortable with their conduct, and the manager says, just don't sweat it, doesn't that kind of behavior constitute a hostile work environment? And it should, but some of these laws are so ridiculous in its statutory language that, as Attorney Lawrence said, you would basically have to be subjected to that consistently in order to make the claim. There are some nuance to that. There is some nuance to that. Carlson is a lying mother. Tucker says, my family and I just now evacuated. We're all worried and we'll never see our home again in one place. Thank you, doctor. I really need some. I wish a Karen Wood therapy to take my mind off of things, if only for a few minutes. You're in my heart and you're in my prayers, brother, all right? Okay, super chat, pool attack. Yoda Speed says, he looks like the Roach Man from Men in Black. He actually does. Yeah, that's what I was wondering what he reminded me of. Thank you for that. That was bothering me. Trevor Watson, this is it, everyone. This is it, everyone has a cell phone. We get to see America as it is, yeah. All right, Twitch, Jax Drax says, I don't see color, followed by, I have this black friend, and that black friend, yada, yada, yada. Right, if you're racist, your black friend is aware of it, by the way. Miravina says, I wish we all could just love each other. Boom, that's the recipe, right? We're trying to get there. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. All right, in the bullpen today, I have Mr. Quill Robinson, VP of Government Affairs at American Conservation Coalition. All right, Quill Robinson, thank you for being on Indisputable. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Dr. Richie. Good, how are you?
I'm doing quite well, man. We're gonna talk about the environment. I don't want to presume what you know or believe about the environment, what your particular point of view is. So if you would, give me some background on what you believe about the environment and maybe some of the political elements involved.
Absolutely. So I think I need to start with where I'm from. I'm from beautiful Seattle, Washington. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, hiking and spending lots of time outdoors. And I mean, that's why I love the environment, is where I grew up and the experiences I shared with my family. So I think that's the important place to start, is I have a deep connection to the environment. I love it and I want to protect it. I think the issue that is on our minds today, particularly as there's wildfires burning out west, is climate change, right? And I think that that is a serious issue that we need to address. As a conservative, I believe that there are ways that we can do that can create both economic prosperity and ensure that we have environmental sustainability, and do that in a smart way. And I think that that's something that probably most Americans share, is that they want to address environmental issues, they want to address climate change, and that's how I come at this issue.
Well, let me push back on one point. I actually agree with your sentiment. I disagree with your conclusion about most Americans agree. When you start breaking down sections of America, for example, Republicans, okay? Roughly 10% of Republicans agree with you. All right, that's based on a recent poll done by Pew Research. It was released in the New York Times. You also have a staggering number of Republicans, the vast majority, who do not believe that climate change or the environmental aspect of climate change is connected to man-made issues, okay? You have roughly 88% of Democrats who believe that the climate is a primary concern and has to be treated seriously now, right? And I know that a lot of times conservatives, they will they have issue with the Green New Deal, but 81% of Americans agree with the Green New Deal. They just disagree on the price tag. That's according to research as well. So how is it that conservatives, brother, because you seem to be a very common sense guy. You seem to have a lot of what my mama would call walking around sense, okay? How is it that Republicans have missed the boat so severely on the narrative, conversation, and debate around climate change in America and the environment?
Well, Dr. Richie, I think we can probably agree that climate change has become a very politicized issue. It's something that divides Republicans and Democrats. You're right. A lot of my fellow Republicans seriously disagree with the Green New Deal and are very concerned about the effect that that plan would have on their communities. Now, when I go out and I speak in conservative communities and red America, so to speak, and I talk about clean air, clean water, good jobs from solar and wind and different types of clean energy, that's something that there's near unanimity on. People agree that they want clean air, clean water, and a healthy future for their children and the children that come after. So I think if we can talk about the solutions and focus on common sense solutions that we can all agree on, I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and that's something that the polling doesn't necessarily reflect. Now, something else I'd point out is young Republicans, young conservatives in particular, a majority of them support addressing climate change and are seriously concerned about this issue. And that's the folks that my organization works with and has really created a movement around common sense climate change solutions on.
Okay, brother, I lost you for just a moment. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I lost you for just a few seconds, but I understand the sentiment that you were talking about. So let us dive into some of those solutions. What are some of the solutions being presented by the Republican Party?
Absolutely. So I'm a pretty practical guy, and I think that we can debate the Green New Deal, and we can talk about kind of far off solutions that are proposed by a few members of Congress. But I'd rather focus on the opportunity ahead of us. And there are a lot of solutions that both Republicans and Democrats do support that actually are moving through Congress right now. One example: planting trees to sequester carbon. Another example: incentivizing farmers to adopt more practices that will help sequester carbon as well. Nuclear energy is another thing that I think is something that has a lot of support among Republicans and conservatives. So I think between clean energy, natural climate solutions, investing in infrastructure, there's a lot that we do agree on.
Let's talk about the Green New Deal. All right, I support the Green New Deal. I think the Green New Deal is a remarkable framework. It created a conversation that needed to happen. But you know this, man, even all Democrats are not in favor of the Green New Deal as it is currently structured. But line by line, item by item, when you actually poll the American people on the Green New Deal, 81% of Americans are for the Green New Deal. So that means that they actually believe in the product. They believe in the product of alternative energy. They believe in the product of an alternative workforce, okay? They believe in it. What they don't believe in primarily is the price tag, even though a lot of that is because of confusion as it relates to how the economy would be impacted by the Green New Deal based on every projection. Between 10 to 50 years, looking at a long-term projection, you actually add a net of 2 million jobs to the workforce given these new green initiatives. So what is the real problem when it comes to the Green New Deal? Because I have a theory, brother. I think the real problem is AOC. I don't think the problem is actually the Green New Deal. I think the issue is where it came from. What are your thoughts about that?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you where we're in agreement. I'm glad that the Green New Deal has inspired so many young people to think about this issue of climate change and think about solutions. I think that that is a good thing, and I'm glad that there is a movement on the left, as there is a movement on the right, the movement that I'm part of, that is calling for common sense action on climate change. And so I'll say I'm excited about that. I think that's a good thing. And now we're in this space where we can debate what solutions are going to work. Here's where I take issue with the Green New Deal. It is a resolution in Congress right now. That means it's not a piece of legislation. That means that actually, it would not do anything in its current form. And so I would much rather focus on pieces of legislation, on policies, on programs that are enactable today that will actually get to lowering greenhouse gas emissions and preparing communities for change. So my beef with the Green New Deal is I don't want to wait for a Green New Deal. I want to support solutions that'll bring Republicans and Democrats together today and actually get to the work of lowering greenhouse gas emissions and addressing this really urgent problem that we're all facing.
Brother, you kind of contradicted yourself because literally you described what the Green New Deal was for in the first place. You're right, it is a resolution. It is not a bona fide policy. It was developed to create a narrative conversation and a framework. That's why I always say the Green New Deal is a framework. And you alluded in this conversation that the Green New Deal did its design purpose, which was to get people talking about energy and environment and pollution, etc., alternative energy in ways that they never talked about it before. So the base principle has been accomplished. You have to admit that. And if that principle was not accomplished, you would not have such a mainstream conversation about energy if you did not have the prerequisite of the Green New Deal. So brother, you have to agree that the Green New Deal, yes, it is a resolution, but that resolution is a framework so that we can have this kind of contextualized conversation.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more conversations we're having about climate change, the better. There is agreement there. And I think progressives and conservatives would agree on that. That's a good thing. But I want to get down to brass tacks. I want to get to addressing this issue. And I think that, it's disingenuous to, say that the conversation stops at just talking about it, right? Now we got to focus on what's actually going to address it. And I just want to list off a couple of things that we've done in the last year that didn't get enough attention, that actually are moving forward and Republicans and Democrats to agree on. At the end of last year, we helped pass the Energy Act of 2020, which invested billions of dollars into clean energy, into carbon capture, into nuclear energy. That passed. And that was Democrats and Republicans coming together. And there are a host of other bills in Congress right now. And here's my beef with AOC. She's not on those bills. And many of the loudest progressive voices are not co-sponsors of those bills either. And I think that they owe it to the American people to actually put their money where their mouth is and co-sponsor these bills that many Republicans are on and many Republicans are supporting, so that we can actually get down to lowering greenhouse gas emissions. Because when it comes to climate change, talk is not enough. Activism is not enough. We need action. We need real solutions.
Yeah, the reason why she's not. Yeah, the reason why she's not on that bill is because she's a principled individual. You have to appreciate that about her. When she ran for office, she said that I would vote based on principle, not based on politics. And she has been able to hold that core fundamental belief about herself. I really appreciate that about AOC. And bills like this simply do not go far enough because, as you are well aware, even that Energy Act was simply a compromise from what more progressives in the Democratic Party wanted to see happen. But let's talk about capitalism, because I think you and I, we may disagree on this aspect of it. We can talk about the environment, we can talk about climate change, but we also have to talk about capitalism, because if you believe in a deregulated market, that means you also believe that it's okay for companies to basically pollute the environment in ways that's unsustainable for the future and the progress of the nation as it relates to the environment. What are your thoughts about capitalism, and how does that correlate to environmental issues in America and beyond?
Absolutely, happy to talk about capitalism. I love capitalism, and I think it's the solution to environmental issues like climate change. I mean, if you look at countries side by side, those that have freer economies and those that have more regulated or even socialist economies, there's no debate. The fact is that a capitalist system where innovation, entrepreneurship, the hard work of individuals is rewarded, you have better environmental outcomes. And the reason for that is people actually have ownership over the solutions that they're creating. They also have ownership over the land and have an incentive to protect it. And so I think that capitalism is by far and away the best system to address these issues. And I think that, I think that when it comes to regulation, you mentioned regulation, I'll give you an example of this. So the largest offshore wind facility in the United States just finally got underway. It was started back in 2008 or 2009. It's called Vineyard Wind. And because of burdensome regulation, we waited over a decade to get our first major offshore wind farm off the ground because people were having to cut through red tape. So that's my case for deregulating in specific ways, is so we can actually get this clean energy that we so badly need. And I think you and I can probably agree that red tape that is preventing green jobs, clean energy, is not red tape that we want. It is not actually benefiting us in this fight against climate change.
Well, let me show you where I do disagree with you based on a factual analysis. Carbon emission, the greenhouse effect, et cetera. It was actually down 1.7% from 2019 to 2020 due to actual regulations in the marketplace. You have a load of science that shows the decrease in these emissions based on regulation and not based on what we would call a purely free capitalistic market. You don't have to go any farther than China to understand what it looks like when you have the corporations in an unregulated format being able to do what they want to do. So I don't understand where you're getting your facts from as it relates to capitalism being unregulated, creating a regulated environmental outcome. How do you get to that point when you don't have one example of any nation where that has been their reality?
Sure. Well, I'm really glad that you brought up China. And the last time I checked, it was the Chinese Communist Party that ran that country. It was not a free country. It was not a democracy. It was not a capitalist system. And I actually think that we should probably, China would benefit from capitalism and democracy.
So let's talk about that for a minute, brother, because I want to make sure you're not conflating something that should not coexist. The formation of government is different from the corporate reality of regulation. The reason why Chinese manufacturers, the reason why these warehouses and other places that process are able to do what they do is because those particular entities are not as regulated. Okay, we're talking about regulation. So we can argue formation of government in another debate. What we're talking about today is the environment. If we're talking about precisely the environment, then those factors, those corporations who are unregulated, they pollute more. It's a real cause and effect relationship, brother. It's not complex. The example that you gave doesn't exist in modern society, that somehow an industry that is completely 100% unregulated as a corporation that engages in emissions, they are not regulating themselves.
Well, Dr. Ritchie, I gave you a specific example of Vineyard Wind where red tape, regulation got in the way of deploying clean energy. And so I'm not saying cut all regulations, that there should be absolutely zero regulation. That's absurd.
So tell me, what is it start and stop? Because maybe we actually do agree more than disagree. Where does the regulation start for you, in your opinion?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I first want to draw this comparison between the United States and China, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there. And we actually have a really good example of a highly regulated communist economy and a free capitalist economy. China is the largest polluter in the world. They contribute almost 30% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The US contributes around 14% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and that number has been going down. Why has it been going down? Because people, because companies, because entrepreneurs, American entrepreneurs are incentivized to create amazing solutions like carbon capture and nuclear energy and all sorts of other things. There's the environment for that sort of innovation to take place.
No, sir, the reason why, brother, 68% of our decreasing emission rate is directly connected to a regulated market in America. You can find that at Pew Research and the EPA. So when you say, well, the majority of it is happening because these companies decided to engage in these smart technologies, untrue. That's just untrue based on facts. The majority of it happens because of regulation, okay? So you're comparing a regulated market, which America still is, to an unregulated manufacturing market, which China continues to have. Once again, you're arguing or debating formation of government. I'm bringing to your front door the reality of regulation versus deregulation. You actually agree with me. I don't think you want to say it on TV, but you agree with me that regulation leads to a better environmental reality.
I think if you ask any economist or probably any entrepreneur on the ground, there's not a whole lot of entrepreneurs in the living under the Chinese Communist Party. If they lived in a regulated or deregulated environment, I think the answer would be a resounding regulated, because it's.
But listen to me, brother.
So I want to talk a little bit about.
You agree? Just hear me out on this. You agree with regulation. Now you may say they need to regulate themselves, but you agree that regulation equates to a better environment, correct?
Well, why don't we talk about it in terms of facts? Why is the United States actually leading the world into the reduction?
Well, brother, if you would, could you answer that question for me first? In all due respect, you do believe that regulation leads to a better environmental outcome, even if you believe that it is through self-regulation. You believe in regulation.
Oh, I absolutely believe that there is a place for regulation. I think that there are good regulations. As I said before, I gave you an example of a bad regulation, and so I think that it's incumbent on us. You as somebody who probably falls on the left side of the aisle, me who falls on the right side of the aisle, to take a hard look at the examples of where regulation is perhaps getting in the way, and then me as a conservative can look at certain places where regulation is perhaps justified. I think the problem is though that a lot of this discussion around climate change is there's too heavy of a focus just on regulation rather than incentivizing the innovation that it actually has and will continue to lower our greenhouse gas emissions. And so by no means am I arguing that there should be no regulation. I think that there is a place for it, but we also need to look at where red tape is getting in the way.
Let me read something to you, man, because I think you're in a great position to become an advocate inside of your own political party, okay? About 9 in 10 Democrats, roughly 88% based on Pew Research, they now consider climate change a major threat to the nation. A major threat to the nation. That's a big deal, okay? That number is up by 27% from a 2009 survey conducted by Pew Research, all right? So Democrats are on the right side of this. By contrast, only 6% increase with Republicans. That's massive. That is a massive difference. So literally, you got damn near 100% Democrats believing the science of this, and you've only had an increase of 6% of Republicans. So now I have to pose this question back to you, my brother, because I actually agree with a lot of what you said here. I don't agree with all of it, but how do you move your political party to a more, dare I say the word, progressive solution as it relates to the environment? Because right now, you all aren't even agreeing on the problem.
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question. And that was the question that created the organization I worked for 4 years ago. We were founded back in 2017, basically with the idea of giving young conservatives and giving conservatives a voice on environmental issues. And so I'm gonna push back a little bit and say that we're not gonna become more progressive, we're gonna become more conservative on this issue. And that means accepting that climate change is a problem and focusing on innovative bottom-up solutions to this issue. And so, I hear you on those numbers, but the fact is, if you read the news, the highest-ranking Republican in the House of Representatives announced a climate platform this year. ACC, my organization, has held events pretty much in every single state with conservatives, with red-blooded Republicans on climate change. The fact is that we're at the table, and we've been proposing a bevy of different pieces of legislation that actually would strike right at the heart of this. So
yeah, man, that's cool.
I think the thing is it's not quite as divided as you may think it is. We may disagree on some of the solutions, though.
That's real cute, brother. But we know good and damn well that these Republicans who actually present pieces of legislation, even when Republicans were in control, they could not get this legislation passed, even when they ran everything. So you have, yes, some powerful ranking members inside of your party saying, listen, guys, we got to get on board with a climate solution that is not the majority of your party. So no matter how you shape this up.
Good. I think that's a good, an interesting point. I'm a very common sense guy, as we were talking about, and I want to give you another example of why I think that may be wrong. So there's this bill called the Growing Climate Solutions Act that my organization has been working on for the past year or so, and it was voted on in the Senate this summer. They had a vote in the Senate on this bill, which would make it easier and actually incentivize farmers to adopt more sustainable agricultural practices. Big opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Now, Dr. Ritchie, it passed 92-8 in the Senate. And actually more Democrats voted against it than Republicans, including Ed Markey and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So I think the thing is that the situation has changed pretty drastically. And actually, when it came down to this vote, it was the Republicans who were in the right and the Democrats who were left behind.
Well, it was a bipartisan bill, brother. But I definitely give you that is a silo impact. But once again, if we're talking about truly moving the needle, you got to get a whole lot more Republicans on board with actual belief that the climate is a real thing, or that the environment is an issue they need to take seriously. Brother, I do appreciate you being on the show, man. Thank you for coming on Indisputable.
Thanks so much for having me. It's good to talk.
Absolutely, man. Keep talking to your people, brother. I'm glad that there are people like you in the world. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of this planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable.